Lord of the Mysteries, A Time Traveler in the Fourth Age by author Kai Yunji. Chapter 126-152. Chapter 126, Divine Right of Kings. The events of the Fifth Age will not be mentioned. In the Fourth Age, the elves finally developed and began their journey of expansion. Although I don't know why the church exists in the form of a church instead of going a step further and taking the form of a state, it doesn't matter. These true God churches have no interest in royal power, but Shah still has a little interest in it. When I was at Sequence 3, I was timid and submissive. Even when I reached Sequence 2, I still only dared to occupy a small piece of land in the far west of the northern continent. But things are different now. I am no longer the same person I used to be. As long as I run fast enough, even true gods won't be able to kill me in 1 second. Shah touched the future emerges talisman in his arms and waved his hand confidently. Erodes, select the generals, and we will march east. Shah used the virtual personality of Sequence 3 to say the harsh words that only an archangel could confidently say. As long as the ancient scholar spell can be mass-produced and the power of the future body can be borrowed, the elves will have the courage to expand their territory to half the area of Intis. At your command, Grand Duke Constantine. The demon hunter controlled by Erodes put on a steel helmet. He raised the 2 long swords in his hands, his eyes full of excitement. He could finally kill as many people as he could. No. He could finally dedicate his strength to the Grand Duke. Your will is obeyed. The Shinpu demigod, the mystic, Shifrin, held an astrolabe in her hand and nodded respectfully to Shah. 2 legions of extraordinary people, mainly from the warrior path and the mystery peer path, brought ordinary soldiers and began to attack the nearest tribes. Erodes rushed the fastest. He dragged his sword and drew 2 deep scratches on the ground. With his terrifying momentum, he took down all the tribes that had some low and mid-sequence beyonders with almost no effort. The mental plague on his body infected these low and middle sequence extraordinary people. It didn't take long for the fear and ambition in these people's eyes to disappear, and they were replaced by deep fanaticism. In order to speed up the process, Shah used a little trick. He was a little embarrassed at first. After all, the other high sequences were preaching in a down-to-earth manner, but he was using the mental plague to brainwash people. He was a bit rude of a nouveau riche, and a rookie player who couldn't afford it. But after learning from Erodes that during this period, whether it was the Church of the 6 Gods, some evil gods, the high sequences that were secretly active, or the demigods that were in development, everyone used the simplest, most convenient, and most effective brainwashing method to preach. Shah felt relieved. Sure enough, it is impossible to make gods follow rules. Although restrictive thinking may cause these anchors to be slightly less effective, they are still sufficient in large quantities. Erodes used the Sword of Dawn to shock people's hearts, and the mental plague to modify their minds. It didn't take much time, and the area of the Principality of Constantine expanded by nearly twice as much as before, occupying an area of about 2 provinces. Erodes was not polite to those followers of the 6 gods who had gone to the westernmost provinces of the northern continent to preach. He converted them all, changed their clothes, and turned them into loyal believers under the Grand Duke's rule. The occasional demigod that jumped out was also repelled by Erodes relying on his excellent frontal combat ability as a warrior. On the contrary, no normal Sequence 4 or Sequence 3 could defeat the armored and wielding Erodes head-on. If Erodes was heading south, then Shivlin was heading north. That place was the territory of the later Fasak Empire. Now, whoever grabbed it would own it. The 6 Gods Church would not grab this remote place, and the other high sequence beings who were developing would not grab it, so it would naturally belong to Shah. In just a few months, Shah's principality expanded to the size of half of the kingdom of Loan. It occupies a vast but barren territory in the northwestern part of the northern continent. The resistance encountered during this period was so insignificant in front of an angel lord. Grand Duke Constantine. Shah stood in front of a mountain. He used lightning as a chisel and storm as an axe to carefully carve the shape of the mountain. The peaks are gradually outlined with lines, like a fluttering dress, surrounded by lush forests, giving a sense of the interdependence between nature and the earth. As the carving continued, the mountain gradually took on the shape of a woman, with a plump and graceful figure, and maternal eyes. She was holding a naked baby in one hand and a dark brown wooden stick in the other. Shah-Ir stretched out his hand towards the extremely cold north, and the snow on the top of the mountain began to melt, flowing down from the mountains and the huge statue of the female god like a waterfall, adding a bit of charm and spirituality to the statue. A simple baby rune stone carving surrounded by wheat ears, flowers and spring symbols is carved on the belt of the long skirt. Bright flowers and golden wheat ears grow out, and the surrounding waterfalls fall on them and continue to flow down the mountain road. At the moment the statue was completed, the huge statue slowly turned its head, and the quiet mountains seemed to suddenly come alive, moving with her breathing. The goddess looked down with a curious look, looking here, as if she was admiring the moving figure, or as if she was paying homage to a miraculous spirit. The source of life, the mother of all things, the sacrifice of the harvest. You are the goddess of hope, the protector of nature, the nurturer of life. I pray for your gaze, for your protection, for the gifts of nature for this barren land, and for the harvest songs for the creatures living on this land. Shah-Ir interlaced his hands, placed his palms empty in front of his mouth and nose, and prayed to the statue in front of him in a standard manner. Behind him, on the land to the west, the humans conquered by Shah-Ir and the creatures influenced by the elves all looked at the place where the huge statue was in different ways. They prayed, they repeated, they longed for blessings from the gods, from the earth, and from the mother goddess. The mother goddess of the earth looked at the ground beneath her feet and the constant sounds of prayer. Not to mention how much sincerity there was in them, just say that this statue was carved from an entire mountain, with elements of nature and life. The melted spring water from the top of the mountain flowed down, and the crisp sound of birds echoed among the mountains. The mineral veins stored inside this mountain are the metal lead, which symbolizes the Mother Earth. Although not very pious, this move is indeed eye-catching enough. It's not that the true God cannot afford to build a statue, but it is obviously more prestigious for him to build one himself than for his believers to build one spontaneously. The mother goddess of the earth raised her eyes and met the gazes coming from the center of the continent. The corners of his mouth curled slightly, and the lead mines in the mountains appeared, wrapping the stone staff in his hand. Chapter 127 Crowning You. This woman is showing off. He showed off blatantly without any disguise, and even revealed the small details for fear that other gods might not be able to see clearly. In this way, they use a mountain to create a statue of their own god, decorate it with various elements that symbolize the god, and specially select veins that contain a large amount of metal elements that symbolize the god. So thoughtful, so detailed, so cool. Have your fanatical followers gone to this extent for you? The smile on the corner of the Earth Mother Goddess' mouth became more and more intense. The owners of those eyes saw this woman, so proud. Their expressions were different, but they all tacitly withdrew their gazes, not wanting to see this guy showing off or boasting. Which serious fanatic doesn't want to preach or improve his sequence? Every day he comes up with some crooked ways. Is this useful? It's useless. The trend of comparison is not desirable. This is just vulgar, childish, and opportunistic flattery. Faintly, there seemed to be a cold snort, but it disappeared in an instant. After these annoying guys left, the Mother Goddess of Earth looked at the elves below with satisfaction. Although she noticed that the other party's gaze lingered on her undulating peaks and valleys, as the former incarnation of beauty, how could she mind if someone wanted to appreciate her unparalleled beauty? Your name? The goddess named after the earth asked. You can call me Shah-Ir. It's currently an ordinary elf. Shah-Ir still kept his hands folded, but did not hide his name. There is not much point in hiding your name from the true God. He looked into the eyes of the Mother Earth, as if he wanted to see his own reflection in them. The smile of the Mother Earth was gentle, without the harshness of a god, and the maternal radiance was intoxicating. She slowly put down the strong naked body in her hand. Pinch off a piece from the nearby mountain range, weave it into a brown crown, and throw it to the elves below. Is this a gift from the earth? Or is it an advanced version of the Stone of Life? Shah-Ir took it and took a look. It contained a strong breath of life. If I have to describe it, even if the health bar of the angel is lowered to the killing line, as long as you wear it, the health bar will immediately recover by more than half. Even if you are slapped by the true God, with this gift of the earth on, the true God will bounce back. Praise be to you, the source of life, the mother of all things, the sacrifice of the harvest. Although this thing feels a bit useless, it was made by the mother goddess of earth herself, so of course Shah-Ir has to express his gratitude. The earth mother nodded with satisfaction. The huge statue gradually stopped moving and became still. Before the light in the statue's eyes disappeared, a soft voice sounded in Shah-Ir's ears. You will be my favored one from now on. The mother goddess of the earth went offline, and the statues carved on the mountains became quiet again, but these statues had an indescribable divinity more than before. The flowers and wheat ears on the mountains grew more beautifully, and the animals on the mountains were full of vitality as if spring had arrived. What the hell, I will become your God-favored one. Did I agree? Did I ask? You didn't ask for my opinion. On the other side, Shah-Ir fell into a brief silence. He just wanted to prevent other, divine organizations, from maliciously competing with him and prevent the gods from taking action without following the moral code, so he erected a monument in his own territory. How did this person become the one favored by the mother goddess of earth? How come you decided on your own? Shah-Ir looked at the first aid kit in his hand and fell into deep thought. Isn't this so-called gift of the earth a return gift? According to the character of the goddess of night, she would observe first, then establish a certain tacit understanding, and finally consider whether to invite someone to join. If someone shows no intention of joining, then at most she can maintain a certain friendly relationship. Now, when it comes to the mother goddess of the earth, you just throw the title of God's favored one on my head. Rhodes, did you think of this beforehand? Shah-Ir asked through telepathic communication. Though I didn't expect you to do so well. But I didn't expect it to be so direct. Rhodes fell silent. Shah-Ir was an elven angel, and as the former queen of giants, the elves and giants had been at odds for such a long time. Even if they put aside their past grudges, as long as Shah-Ir was allowed to slightly borrow the name of the Earth Church, it would be very good. At least we can proceed step by step and give each other some time to adjust, adapt and observe each other, right? Now just with one sentence, you can designate her as one favored by God. Maybe they are attracted by the land elves that are mainly from the path of destiny and the path of cultivators. Shah-Ir felt that this was more in line with the truth. The mother goddess of the earth is disguised as the vampire ancestor Lilith, not the giant Queen Umbella. He might really have taken a fancy to those useful land elves, and also wanted to repay the favor of the elves for protecting the vampires, so he casually gave them the identity of a god-favored one. For an elf who aspires to become a god, the identity of a person favored by God is rather useless. He also feels a bit constrained and uncomfortable. After all, the previous person favored by God was called Klein Moretti, also known as Dear Mr. Fool. There are benefits, but it feels a bit. He just wanted to exchange his faith for a franchise, title, establish a state religion, and gild it in exchange for silent approval. This is a normal transaction. He just wanted to get the title of God's blessed one. It seems like he really wants something from the earth. At least now, as a favored person of the Mother Earth, you don't have to worry about other true gods destroying your territory at will. Moreover, the current world situation is that the true Creator, the Lord of Storms, the Eternal Sun, and the God of Knowledge and Wisdom are hostile to each other. The Goddess of Night, the God of War, and the God of Death, of the southern continent are at odds with each other. Although the Mother Goddess of Earth is slightly inclined towards the God of War, she is generally neutral. That's why you chose to carve a statue for the Earth Mother. Rhodes analyzed while comforting him. It feels that being a favored one of the Earth Mother Goddess is not that difficult. The Earth Mother Goddess's position is relatively neutral, and the Earth Mother Goddess's church currently has no strong hatred with any true God force. It can get benefits while being relatively safe. That's not too bad. I understand the reason. Shah Iyer's expression was still a little subtle. In this special era of the Fourth Era, a hybrid angel, defected, to the six gods. Doesn't this seem very unambitious? Can you refuse? Rhodes asked back. My carving skills are really good. I can perfectly depict the fullness of the Mother Goddess. Shah Iyer selectively ignored this heart-wrenching question. Apart from anything else, when he looked at the bulge, the Mother Goddess of the Earth actually cooperated by slightly straightening her back. With such a performance, it was impossible for her to be an evil god. As for why it looks so big, and it was carved by myself, it is obviously made up of mountains, but it does not have the sharp edges of mountains. Instead, it has a certain softness, as if it is a stack of flowing fine sand. This ability to transform matter is quite eye-catching, isn't it? Chapter 128, There is no use running away. The Fifth Era. After Ms. Hugh Dilcher received the commission from the Harry Party, or Backland Integrated Affairs Services Company, she began to investigate the anomalies of other gangs in the East District. Relying on her connections in the East District, she quickly locked onto the latest suspicious target, Merceau, the executioner of the Zemanger Party. A leader of a high position. This guy's behavior has been a little abnormal recently. After Miss Shu locked on the target, she began to investigate and found that Mr. Merceau was not active in the regular sphere of influence in the East District, but was intentionally or unintentionally running to the Jouvert District. During this period, they received clues from the Backland Integrated Affairs Services Company. Their cleaners found a cold body in the East and West sewers. After identification by some people in the East District, it was confirmed that the owner was a detective named Zarel Victor Lee. Someone had previously commissioned the service company to look for this detective, but the job was taken over by another detective. The death of this detective seems to be related to this incident. After Miss Shu accepted the investigation, when she went back to rest, she was surprised to see that her best friend Furs did not sleep until the afternoon. What's that look in your eyes? Today is the day when Miss Audrey settles her wages. No matter what, I have to get up early and dress up. Furs looked at Zio with some dissatisfaction. She was just a little lazy, but that didn't mean she was lazy. Even if she was lazy at home, she would always pay attention to her image when she went out. I thought you would let me take your share of the money as well. Zio said with some amusement. You used to ask me to help bring meals, buy magazines, buy tea and beer, and buy cigarettes for me, but when it came time to collect the money, you didn't ask for my help. Ahem. It doesn't matter whether it's money or not. It's mainly about respect for Miss Audrey. She's our big customer, I can't be rude to her. Furs coughed awkwardly twice and said, let's go. We can enjoy a sumptuous afternoon tea at Viscount Graylant's place. Hugh had no objection either. Especially when the bulging envelope, carrying the weight of money, falls into your hands. The neatly formed gray banknotes and the rich and special scent of ink, even without counting them specifically, one could tell that it must be a considerable amount. I'm sorry for putting you in danger. This is my compensation to you. Audrey said with a faint smile. Although Chi Lingos's body was picked up by a lucky nighthawk, she still got what she wanted from the hanged man, and of course she received the rewards from Furs and Miss Shu. Moreover, she was also thinking about recruiting more members to expand the Tarot Club. Audrey smiled harmlessly and guided the two women whose judgment was influenced by money to borrow a few books she had prepared in advance. Joining the Tarot Club was not a bad thing, and Audrey had no psychological burden about it. This led to Hugh falling for it while he was lying on the sofa reading the History of the Lowen Kingdom Nobility in the evening. What is this? Looking at the old note hidden in the cover, as well as the special symbols created by Emperor Russell and the corresponding ancient Hermes text, Zio looked over curiously and recited out of habit. A fool who does not belong to this era. In the gray fog space, after Klein received the news, he considered the petite woman's ability to bear it and decided to wait until late at night to respond to this prayer. Finally realizing what a stupid thing he had done, Zio jumped up from the sofa where he was curled up like a frightened kitten. I actually chanted the name of an evil god like this. No, maybe I'm too nervous. How can there be so many evil gods in this world? The fool. I've never heard of such a name before. Although he comforted himself in this way, Zio's expression was still tense. Even when he went to the toilet, he sat on the toilet absent-mindedly. Like a wax figure of a thinker. The environment inside was slightly dim, and the sound of footsteps gradually began to sound. There was no sound of the door lock turning, and a long shadow had already covered the room. The abnormality of the surroundings directly awakened the somewhat dazed arbitrator, and she threw the roll of paper in her hand away without hesitation. Then he pulled out the three-edged spike from his waist, prepared to pull up his pants, and fight the invading evil god or demon. Ah, Shu, what are you crazy about? The scream sounded so familiar. Shu paused in pulling up his pants and looked up. Who was the evil god walking out of the shadows? Wasn't it his lazy best friend? Furs covered her red head and rushed over with the torn roll of toilet paper in her hand. You're crazy. You come out of the wall at night, are you trying to scare me to death? Also, why don't you go through the main door instead of going through the bathroom? When Zio saw Furs complaining, she became even angrier. Could you please consider the feelings of your cohabitant? This is the sacred baptismal room. Scare people in the toilet and it can really kill them. Ahem, you know, I always like to go in a straight line. I came back a little late, so I don't want to take a detour. After all, I am an apprentice. Furs was somewhat embarrassed by Zio's roar. This might indeed be her problem, but she didn't mean it. The ability of the apprentice is to walk through walls. Once you are used to walking through walls, who would still want to go through the front door? Give me the paper and get out. Zio resisted the urge to comb her best friend's hair and said coldly. Ahem, I'll be out right now. Furs obviously realized that now was not the right time to talk, so she quickly put the paper aside, pressed the wall next to her, opened a door, and slipped away. In the middle of the night, after some thought, Shu said goodbye to Furs under the pretext of investigating the mafia, and went straight to the Mass Hall of St. Samuel's Church to sleep. She did not barge in unprepared, she had paid a serious donation, in the hope of staying in the Mass Hall for one night to relieve the anxiety caused by excessive pressure in life. In such an atmosphere, she could have a good sleep and relieve her insomnia. The Church of Night does have this business. A certain bishop on duty waved his sleeves and dragged the nervous Shu directly into a dream, then blurred the dream and used his soul-soothing ability to grant her a good sleep. After falling asleep, Zio slept peacefully. After all, this was the Mass Hall of the Church of Night. Even if there were any evil gods or demons, could they harm her here? Everything should be fine by tomorrow morning. This was Zio's plan, and it was a very good plan, but he was still pulled above the gray fog by the unsportsmanlike Mr. Fool. Chapter 129 Dirty Things. Late at night, the red moon was obscured by dark clouds, and the foggy sky made it difficult to see the light from the stars. Above the gray fog, Klein had made full preparations. If he pulled the person in directly, the other party might not be able to bear it, and might even be scared to death. But if he pulled the other party out of the dream, the other party might just think it was a nightmare, and it would be secretive enough. So, Klein directly pulled people into the gray fog. Miss Shu, who was sleeping peacefully at the headquarters of the Church of Evernight in Backland, never expected that this evil cult would be so bold and not give the Church of Evernight any face at all. You know, there are still Sequence 5 spirit wizards on duty in the church. At such a close distance, the spirit of a believer who paid money suddenly disappeared. You really think the Church of Evernight can't see it, right? Shah-Ir held a thin blanket in his hand and gently covered Miss Shu, who was curled up in the long row of seats in the church mass hall, with it. He turned around, smiled and nodded to Bishop Electra who was on duty, then sat down quietly beside him, looking ahead, praying silently under the crimson-colored, star-studded holy light of the night. Bishop Electra saw the blanket on the girl in night costume, he nodded in understanding, sat in the shadow, and flipped through an ancient book. The dark environment did not hinder his reading, but made him more focused. Above the gray fog, Zio opened his eyes dazedly, and what he saw was not the familiar mass hall, but a giant ancient palace, gray-white mist flowing like water, and a dark figure sitting in the main seat, looking down at him. Ghost. Zio was so frightened that he instinctively reached for the three-edged spike on his waist, but found nothing. Before she could react, Mr. Fool's network was disconnected, and Zio's spirit disappeared. Only a crimson star remained above the gray fog, proving that she had been there. Sure enough, as long as the other party recites my honorable name, I can pull him into this mysterious space. The crimson star symbolizes the degree of connection between the target and the gray fog space. It's just that I'm limited by my own spirituality. I can't establish too many connections, nor can I pull two strong beyonders into this mysterious space. This conclusion made Klein feel a little better. What does this mean? This means that Mr. Angel is most likely a sequence 7, and at best a sequence 6. He cannot be a beyander of a higher sequence. Otherwise, there was no way for me to pull the other party into the gray fog space. If it's just sequence 7. Klein leaned back in his chair, feeling very relaxed. After such a long period of training, although he still had a high probability of not being able to defeat a sequence 7, it was no longer enough to make him fearful. On the contrary, he still had the ability to cut off the target's connection with the gray fog space at any time. So far, Mr. Angel has never asked to buy potion formulas or extraordinary materials at the Tarot Club. In addition, he knows so many secrets. He may be a true extraordinary noble with a legacy, or the offspring of a high-ranking member of a secret organization. Anyway, it is impossible that he is from the Orthodox Church, otherwise, the fool should have attracted the attention of the authorities long ago. The other person's speaking style and certain habits are also completely different. Mr. Angel should know some high-sequence beyonders. He disappeared and did not attend the Tarot Club for a month. He should have been trying to find a way to sever his connection with the gray fog space, but the final result should be failure. This was not true either. His attitude towards participating in the Tarot Club afterwards was obviously more relaxed. He should have found a method that could block the summoning of the gray fog for a short period of time, like the complex sacrificial ritual he had introduced. He had a certain degree of confidence, but there was no way to completely get rid of the gray fog. This also explains why the other party is still so respectful of the fool. Or maybe the more you know, the more you understand the horror of the fool. Block the fool's call for a short period of time. Some kind of holy object, or, using the power of a high-sequence beyander. Klein was very interested. Speaking of holy objects, the first thing that came to his mind was the sword of the goddess, the holy sword of Mr. Crestsisima. It was said that the sword could be called a holy object because it had a certain connection with the goddess. Mr. Angel, although he is not very active sometimes, the information and resources he possesses are a great asset. Moreover, he has a good relationship with other members of the Tarot Club. Klein tapped his fingers lightly on the bronze tabletop. Looking at the crimson mass that was obviously brighter than the other crimson stars, his frown gradually relaxed, and he let down his guard against the angels a little. According to Mr. Angel's previous description, he also completed the extraordinary promotion some time ago. So before, he was probably just a sequence 8 beyander. Otherwise his spirituality would not be able to support such a meeting consumption. Now, the Tarot Club should only have 2 sequence 7s, Angel, and Hanged Man, and it won't be a big problem. I'm lucky too. Klein looked at the crimson stars of the angel and said with some emotion. Mr. Angel had been courting death before, and had attempted a mysterious ritual of praying to the fool above the gray fog, which had caused the gray fog space to move abnormally, and he was almost squeezed off the line. He only managed to get through with the fool's permission. But he also ate the paper that the fool manifested, which was made of unknown material and principle. This may have indirectly strengthened the connection between the angel and the gray fog space, making it difficult for the angel to seek help from high-sequence beyonders and cut off its connection with the Fool. This may also be the reason why the angel's crimson star is brighter. It's good now. Mr. Angel seems to have found a way to block the influence for a short period of time. This has made him let down his guard and willing to participate more actively in the daily discussions of the Tarot Club. But he can't completely break this connection, even if he asks for help from a high-sequence Beander. This will make him remain in awe of the Fool. For this reason, he dare not offend the Fool easily, and he dare not spread the information of the Tarot Club at will. After achieving logical closure through careful reasoning, the private detective smiled with satisfaction. He was not afraid now. It was meaningless for the angel to lead the high-sequence warriors behind him to fight their way above the gray fog. If there really was something on the angel, Klein wouldn't be able to pull her when he tried to pull her. Even if something dirty really came up from the gray fog space, Klein would simply cancel the summons and return to the real world, and the dirty thing would be trapped in the gray fog space. Moreover, if he is gone, some dirty things may not be able to continue to stay in the gray fog space. If the room owners withdraw, the server will not be disbanded. When this is a public server. Chapter 130, Ghost. Backland. St. Samuel's Cathedral, Prayer Hall. Miss Shu woke up from the nightmare with horror. Her back was immediately soaked with sweat, and the shadow of that startling figure lingered in her heart like a nightmare, unable to be shaken off. "You're awake. Would you like some hot milk?" Beside her, Shah-Ir stood up and asked her in a friendly manner. "Are you a clergyman of the church?" Zio was startled at first, but soon calmed down when he saw the blanket on himself, the other party's iconic black and red clergy robe, and the holy emblem of the knight hanging on his chest. "Yes, I am a deacon, right? At least I prefer titles like deacon or bishop to priest, but unfortunately I don't have enough experience. My bishop mentor would rather let me stay in office for a while and doesn't want me to take over his position too soon." Shah-Ir smiled helplessly. "Have you been guarding here all this time?" Hearing the other party's joke, Zio's nervous mood was relieved, and the environment here was relatively safe, so she asked with confidence. "It's not like I have to stay here. Being on duty is also my job. Compared to my colleagues who need to go out on field duty, my job of providing help to believers in need within the church is already very easy." As Shah-Ir spoke, he stretched his arms and comforted Miss Shu, who was still a little uneasy. "You don't have to worry or be afraid. This is the cathedral of the Church of Evernight. Even the royal family of Loan cannot harm the believers of the goddess here, let alone anything else." Shah-Ir turned around and made tea. He placed a cup of steaming black tea next to Bishop Electra, who was reading a book. When he came back, he was holding a cup of warm milk in his hand and handed it to the girl in front of him. "Thanks." Zio thanked him quietly, and she took a sip of the milk, and the fear and anxiety in her heart dissipated a little bit again. "This milk is sweeter than I expected, probably because it has sugar added to it." "It doesn't matter. If it's convenient, can you tell me what you dreamed about just now?" As a clergyman of the Church of Darkness, I am quite knowledgeable in dream interpretation. Shah-Ir placed the teacup and a plate of midnight snacks on the empty seat next to him, and pushed the plate towards Zio, indicating that he could enjoy the snacks on it by himself. "Thanks. I saw a palace full of fog and there seemed to be a vague black shadow, but I couldn't see anything clearly, and then I woke up in shock." Zio had not originally intended to speak of this matter, but Shah-Ir's gentle attitude eased her heartstrings a little, and she unconsciously spoke of these things. "The picture you depict undoubtedly points to the unknown, mysterious, and thrilling, words that make people subconsciously associate them. From a psychological point of view, this means that you are under great pressure, which may even threaten your life and make you have a serious fear of something." Shah-Ir pretended to observe Miss Shu's expression, and then spoke in a very professional and scientific tone. "Is that so?" Hugh was a little unsure. She suspected that in her previous dream, she might have accidentally recited the name of the evil god or devil. But the deacon's reaction made her deeply suspicious. What he said was right. This was the prayer hall of the Church of Night. How could the evil gods and demons dare to attack the goddess's believers here? Night and dreams also belong to the authority of the goddess. A clergyman from the Church of Night has been staying by his side. If something bad had really happened to him, his expression would not have been as calm as it is now. Have you ever encountered someone or something that frightened you, or encountered some kind of misfortune that made you feel extremely insecure? Shah-Ir continued to guide the girl, asking her to think about Vice Admiral Hurricane whom she had met before, and to think about her own life experience which had undergone tremendous changes. Sure enough, when the pressure of real life hits us, the shock we received in the dream becomes insignificant. When you find that you still have 32 years of mortgage to pay off and your huabe is about to be overdue. At this time, even if the vase in your room moves by itself, you don't have time to pay attention to it. Even if the computer screen lights up automatically and plays some popular content, you will not have any expression of shock or excitement. At this time, you can perhaps be described as a person who fears ghosts. This was how Zio felt at the moment. She lowered her head sadly and quickly finished the milk in the cup, still biting the rim of the cup and unwilling to let go. Like some kind of robot with the wrong instructions. Zilingo's previous death threats. Furs suffered from headaches every time the full moon came, and heard strange curses in her mouth. My father's unsolved case, my family's revoked title, my younger brother, my depressed mother, and myself who was trying to keep busy but had no idea what I was busy with. All these things came to my mind at once. Evil gods and demons were no longer important. If this was my fate, then let it be destroyed, right here, in the goddess's church. Zio thought in a self-deprecating way, and then he felt a hand rubbing his head. Hearing that it was not familiar. But it's an unexpectedly friendly male voice. I'm really not good at comforting people. I'm a technically skilled night butler. Ma'am, do you require a purification ritual? Consider this as an apology for my previous presumptuous speculation. I can also give you an additional opportunity to experience a small mass. Shah-Ir glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already past midnight. If the guests chose to stay overnight, it would be time for some special services. Purification ritual. For something like a purification ritual, wouldn't it be more reliable to find someone from the Church of the Eternal Sun? Could the Church of the Dark Night also perform a purification ritual? And a small mass. Shu didn't expect that there was such a good opportunity waiting for her. She was still reserved and didn't agree immediately. At least she had to show that she was somewhat unfamiliar with Fifan. Yes, the purification ritual. I will hold a ceremony and pray to the goddess to drive away all your misfortune and terror, leaving only the peace of your soul. Now, please close your eyes and wait patiently. Shah-Ir pretended to be serious and asked Miss Shu to close her eyes. Then he prayed to the goddess of misfortune and fear, the lord of sleep and silence, and performed a simple ritual magic. In theory, as long as the goddess of night eats a person's misfortune and fear, that person's mind will become peaceful. When Zio heard the hymn of the night being sung softly in her ears and her petite figure was shrouded by the shadow cast by Shah-Ir, she indeed felt at ease and peaceful. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 131, Night Canteen. Early the next morning, Miss Shu left with satisfaction. The full range of services provided by the Church of Night was very pleasant, so pleasant that Miss Shu donated to the Church of Night again and said she would come again next time if she had the chance. Shah-Ir was also very satisfied. It was more interesting to work such a night shift, but in this way, he always felt that something was missing. How about setting up a late-night restaurant? As he thought about it, he turned his head and looked straight at Bishop Electra, who had stayed up all night but was still very energetic and had not lost his hair. What are you planning again? Bishop Electra saw Shah-Ir's obviously abnormal look. This sequence 5 Beander felt like turning around and walking away, not daring to look directly at him. Nothing, Mr. Bishop, I was just wondering if we should add a late-night cafeteria to the church. Shah-Ir took 2 quick steps towards Bishop Electra and said, "Late night diner. In the prayer hall of St. Samuel's. Oh, goddess, have you been contaminated by some devil?" Even though she had anticipated this, Bishop Electra was still shocked when she heard this outrageous answer. Is the distortion of faith by the secret prayer path so horrible? Mr. Bishop, your expression is a little hurtful. This is clearly a very reasonable suggestion. Wouldn't it be better to serve the believers by opening a late-night restaurant? After Shah-Ir realized that the name, canteen, was a bit vulgar, he immediately changed his words. I think your suggestion is very creative, but Archbishop Anthony may have different opinions. An old night watchman who walked out of the Chinese gate interrupted. As he spoke, he signaled Shah-Ir to look behind him. Archbishop Anthony had appeared in the corner of the prayer hall at some point, and he should have heard Shah-I's suggestions throughout. Mr. Archbishop, you are up very early. Shah-Ir greeted them first, and then explained fearlessly, Mr. Archbishop, colleagues, just imagine, if late at night, we use an empty room in the front hall to convert it into a canteen, then the believers who come to the church late at night to ask for comfort or help can drink a bowl of warm vegetable soup. We, the night watchmen on duty, sit aside and listen to the troubles of the believers, using food as an aid to comfort their grief and sorrow. Moreover, our own staff on duty can also enjoy a rich midnight snack, which helps to improve their enthusiasm for duty. Isn't this great? Shah-Ir began to seduce Archbishop Anthony. Although the old man's temperament was somewhat similar to that of a gravekeeper in the wilderness, Shah-Ir knew that the archbishop's character was not so old-fashioned. Moreover, this was the Church of Night after all, and even if the archbishop didn't like it, he wouldn't really do anything. It is not popular to shout, "Got it," within the Church of Night. After listening to Shah-Ir's analysis, Archbishop Anthony did not reject it immediately. Instead, he thought about the pros and cons of doing so. As the Archbishop of St. Samuel's Cathedral, Archbishop Anthony also often has to work night shifts in the church. If there is an additional cafeteria in the church, after all, a sequence 3 saint also needs to eat. Not only Archbishop Anthony, but other clergymen who rushed over after hearing the noise also began to discuss in a low voice. These people all felt that having another late-night restaurant seemed like a good idea, primarily to serve the believers and secondarily to serve themselves, so there was nothing wrong with that. Just because insomniacs don't sleep at night doesn't mean they don't need to eat. Besides, Mr. Archbishop, the goddess will definitely not hate it. If we charge for our canteen, it would be a disgrace to the glory of the goddess. We can do it for free. We can provide a temporary place for believers who are hungry, in need, and in need of help, where they can rest and avoid the cold. We can share our food with them and pass on our faith to them. Bringing a little warmth to those who are wandering in the dark night, this is what our church advocates, isn't it? Seeing that there was hope, Shah-Ir continued to increase his strength and tempt her. You have a point. I have no objection. Archbishop Anthony listened to Shah-Ir's constant persuasion, and a trace of helplessness appeared on his usually solemn face. As an archbishop who was cared for by the goddess, could he still refute anything at this time? The image of the goddess of night can only be described as philanthropic, selfless and warm. There's no way to refute that. But you have to be clear about one thing. There are too many believers in Backland who need help. The helplessness in Archbishop Anthony's voice became much more obvious, and everyone could hear it. The night watchman who had been whispering before also stopped talking and fell silent. This is almost an unsolvable problem. It would be easy to open a free canteen at St. Samuel's Cathedral. But what if this matter gets out? Those who believe in the goddess, those who do not believe in the goddess, the homeless, those who have lost their jobs, the elderly, those who have lost their parents, all swarm in at night, which is a burden to the Church of Night. If not handled properly, it will bring trouble. Those night watchmen who were originally interested also calmed down. Working the night shift was tiring, and they were causing trouble for themselves just for a canteen. It's not a good deal. Bishop Electra was also helpless. He knew from the beginning that the trouble was not whether it was possible or not. The church also has problems that cannot be solved. This is a reality and a fact. Difficulties are not a reason for us to do nothing. We are in the North District, and the situation in the North District is many times better than that in the East District. I believe the church is fully capable of resolving these issues. Since Mr. Archbishop is worried about too many people flocking to the church, we can make some adjustments. For example, our cafeteria is free, but after wealthy believers feel the spiritual comfort here, would they be willing to donate some money or food to pass on this comfort through the church? After those less wealthy believers have received food and a place to rest, if they are free the next day, are they willing to obey the church's arrangements and use their own labor to help those in greater need? For example, they can contribute to the public welfare undertakings led by the Church of the Night. The church has its own almshouse, and perhaps we can combine forces to give more attention to this issue. Shah Iyer was not scared off by this difficulty. Instead, his persistence made many Nighthawks look at him with admiration, and his words were still sharp. Excuse me, the current situation in Loan is also related to the church's inaction. Chapter 132. Don't stop me, I want to die to prove my will. Excuse me, the current situation in Loan is also related to the church's inaction. As soon as Shah Iyer said this, the looks those Nighthawks gave him instantly became complicated. Watch your words, Mr. Maynard. Bishop Electra interrupted Sher's speech directly, fearing that he would say more disrespectful words. Daly, who was watching the show happily, also lost the smile on her face. She quickly walked up to Archbishop Anthony, bowed apologetically, then grabbed Shah Iyer's hand and tried to drag him away, but she grabbed nothing. I said the church was wrong, and I will not change my words. Even if His Holiness Pope Dabamaki appeared in front of me today, I would still hold this attitude. Shah Iyer cut directly into the shadow world and then cut out, avoiding Daly's grasp. He looked at Anthony Stevenson, the Archbishop of the Church of Evernight, without any fear. He was a high-ranking member of the Church of Evernight who once said, "We are guardians but also pitiful creatures. Even if I die now and return to the goddess's kingdom, I will still pray to the goddess. The church is wrong. Your love for the believers is simply the most ridiculous excuse. The king and the nobles are responsible for managing the country and the people, and the Orthodox Church is only responsible for fighting the dangers in the darkness. Who made this rule? Has he really walked barefoot on the earth to take a look?" After Shah Iyer finished speaking, the fog in the field suddenly calmed down, and the environment in the prayer hall seemed to become even darker. Even Crest Sesima, one of the three giants of the red gloves, almost lost his grip on the box in his hand, causing the holy object called the Sword of the Goddess to fall to the ground. Haha, the secret prayer path is really not a good path. It looks fine, but has he gone crazy a long time ago? Archbishop Anthony, I request that this boy be locked up and subject to careful examination by the church. Daly finally couldn't help but take action and directly pinned Shah Iyer down. She wanted to use the undead to directly drown Shah Iyer, but now Archbishop Anthony's expression was so gloomy and a little scary, and the undead in her body didn't dare to appear at all. Archbishop Anthony, he may really have mental problems. I request that he be imprisoned behind the Chinese gate. Bishop Electra also stepped forward and made a request, directly asking that Shah Iyer be imprisoned behind the Chinese gate. Archbishop Anthony, I also request that he be imprisoned behind the Chinese gate. After Crest Sesima firmly grasped the silver box in his hand, he also stood up to plead for mercy. This seemed to be a signal, and more clergymen of the Church of Night stood up to plead for mercy. Shah Iyer's expression remained unchanged. The Orthodox Church could supervise wild extraordinary people, secret organizations, and earth rooms, but it could not supervise nobles and wealthy businessmen. He didn't want to talk about conspiracy theories, nor did he expect the structure of the Fifth Era established by the Seven Gods to take the grassroots into consideration, but that didn't stop him from standing up and saying, "You guys are doing a terrible job." Shah Iyer didn't know whether the other Nighthawks had thought about this. Maybe they had, but how could the world's situation be so easily affected by one person's thoughts? Having the ability but not taking action is human freedom. Because the unspoken rule of the church is not to interfere in politics, so although I have good intentions, I can't do anything. I can only help a few people I see. As for the root cause of all this collapse, I can't do it. I can't do this. This is the pattern of the world. It has been like this since ancient times. Even if I am strong, I can do nothing. Although I am strong, I am sorry. Shah-Iyer looked at the old man with deep eyes and expressionless face, but with a very terrifying aura that even made his legs tremble constantly. He just looked at him without saying a word. With shaking hands, he tapped his chest 4 times, drawing a crimson moon. Daly, who was closest to Shah-Iyer, also felt a fear from the bottom of her heart and moved a beat slower. The shadows in Shah-Iyer's hands gathered into a short blade and stabbed directly towards his heart. Bang! The shadow dagger in Shah-Iyer's hand was directly submerged in the darkness, and his spirit was also affected by the darkness and he fainted. Such a thrilling scene scared Daly, who was a little slow just now. She hurriedly hugged the unconscious Shah-Iyer, worried that something bad would happen again. His emotions are indeed a little unstable and a little impatient. Tie him up and lock him up behind the Chinese gate for now. Wait until he wakes up and calms down before proceeding with the next step of the examination. I agree with the plan for the late-night canteen. Night watchmen often act in the dark, which does make them feel depressed. They also need some food at night to soothe their souls. It was rare for Anthony Stevenson to speak so much, and his eyes never left the unconscious Shah-Iyer. Once, or rather, countless times before today, he had similar words, but he kept them in his heart and never said them out loud. Today, someone spoke for him, although this person was not a sleepless person, but a secret praying person. But perhaps, it is precisely because of this that the other party can listen more clearly to the silent and desperate sorrow that is uttered all the time in the most prosperous metropolis in the world. Shah-Iyer was dragged away. Amid the complicated gazes of all the night watchers, they were all very glad that Archbishop Anthony did not hold Shah-Iyer responsible. Instead, he cooperated with Daly and determined that he was mentally ill. However, everyone also knew that some words are different after all, whether they are said or not. Even Bishop Electra had not expected that this student would be so strong-willed. He even dared to mention the name of His Holiness Pope Dabamaki. Red Rose Manor on the outskirts of Backland. Inz L. held a bright rose in his hand and counted the petals of the rose one by one. He was somewhat disappointed that he was not able to let himself down. What he actually wanted to talk about was the goddess of night, but for gods, there was no right or wrong in such matters. Therefore, this can only be the fault of the Church of Night. The Kingdom of Loan, the strongest country in the northern continent, has been winning like this all the time. The royal family and the nobles are responsible. Doesn't Saint Dabamaki, who is stationed at the Temple of Night, have any responsibility? If he had been more flexible, and given the night parishes a little more leniency in his attitude, perhaps things would have been different. At least, Ince Al felt that in the eyes of a saint like Archbishop Anthony, those so-called nobles were nothing. But these people have obviously become accustomed to their current lifestyle. They are all normal, and I am the odd one out. But what I did in the Fourth Age was not kind either. He thought about it and felt that he was just innocent and was just having fun. Chapter 133 Call Me Teacher. Backland, Suburbs, Red Rose Manor. This is the manor of Prince Edisic, the third Prince of Loan. Compared with the usual Loan royal family, this prince's personality is more gentle. Normally, I prefer to stay in this manor rather than Sodrak Palace. The atmosphere here is freer and there are not as many rules as in the Loan Palace. Teacher. Edisic looked at the Inz L, who was blind in one eye and called him respectfully. Behind him, the round-faced Triss looked at the beautifully decorated manor with some disgust. She wanted to escape and pursue freedom. But she can't escape it, it's like a witch's fate, she can get neither love nor freedom. The twisted and tangled threads can only be freed when they completely collapse. If they encounter a fire that is not fierce enough, they can only produce an even more unpleasant burning smell. Edisic, the royal family has high hopes for you, which is why they asked me to teach you. Looking back at the history of Loan, such as the White Rose War, it seems that every prince who inherited the title of Earl Rustin had to pay something for this country. Inzel smiled as he glanced at Edisic, whose expression had become serious, the butler or the royal monitor who lowered his head even lower, and the more impatient little witch Triss. Count Lustig. This title is nothing special, but when it is linked to the White Rose War, it becomes interesting. The Rose War was a war between the Kingdom of Loan and the Kingdom of Intis. Before this war, in the last major battle, the Kingdom of Loan was defeated by the Fasak Empire and ceded Sonia Island. The Kingdom of Loan relied on the White Rose War to restore its international image. The key point of this battle was the sacrifice of Count Rustin, a member of the royal family, in exchange for the final victory of the war. Listening to his cheap teacher, he talked about high hopes, the White Rose War, and Count Lustig. Prince Edisic almost thought that the war between the two powerful nations in the northern continent was about to break out again, and that he was the one that the royal family had decided to sacrifice in this battle. If his intelligence network had not told him that the naval battle between the Kingdom of Loan and the Fasak Empire in the southern continent colony had not happened long ago and Loan had not yet made strategic preparations to resume the war, he would have almost believed it. Teacher, what exactly do you mean? Prince Edsac turned his head and looked at the old butler. After finding that the old butler also shook his head, he respectfully asked, Inzel, again. Have you got a sword? Shah Iyer did not answer, but asked back. He was still thinking about how to act it out more vividly. This is important and difficult. Teacher, of course I have a sword. Prince Edisic drew the sword from his waist. After all, it was the old rune, judgment, flag, so how could there be no long sword? Is your sword sharp? Shah Iyer continued to ask with a smile on his face. Certainly. Prince Edisic understood some of the meaning and answered without any hesitation. We are all young people, how can we say no at this time? Prince Edisic raised his sword and answered decisively, with a hint of heroism in his voice. Cut it off. Shah Iyer said, pointing to the long mahogany table in the room that looked very valuable. Good. Although Prince Edisic was puzzled, the teacher in front of him was a demigod after all. He waved his hand vigorously, and the long table in front of him was split into two, without a trace of pain in his eyes. He doesn't care how much the furniture is worth. It was just a matter of cutting a table. For the third prince of Loan who was in the middle sequence of the judge's path, it was a piece of cake. Very good, you have proven your ability. Well, one last little test then. Shah Iyer smiled with satisfaction. How did I prove my ability? Chopping down a table. Isn't that enough to have hands? Even if it's made of solid wood. Prince Edisic felt that his teacher looked down on him, but he felt that it was unnecessary. So the real test. It must be the small test the teacher mentioned. Then let the horse come. No matter how difficult it is, I will definitely solve it for you. This is the pride of the royal family. Edisic clenched the sword in his hand, looking at Sure, with burning eyes, feeling a little expectant in his heart. On the other side, the old butler and Triss were also looking at Shah Iyer with some curiosity. What kind of difficult challenge was it? Shah Iyer took out a flag from his arms, unfolded it, held it with both hands, and said to Prince Edisic. Cut it off. Use your sword, just like before. The pattern on the flag was also very simple, a sword of judgment, pointing straight down with a ruby crown on the handle. How dare you? The old butler interrupted angrily. At this moment, he no longer cared about the etiquette he had adhered to for many years. That was the symbol of the Loan royal family. How dare this traitor of the Church of Darkness instigate their third prince to do such a heinous act? Shut up. You are just a pair of eyes and ears, but you don't have a mouth. Shah Iyer raised his hand and pointed at the old butler, who immediately became cold and could not make any sound. Triss couldn't help but shudder. From her spiritual perspective, she could see a skeleton arm covering the old butler's mouth. This old guy is also a very powerful Beander, but he is obviously nothing in front of a true demigod. It seems interesting to instigate the prince of the kingdom of Loan to cut off the flag of his own family. Triss looked at the man with a red face. The long sword had already been slashed out, but because she saw the specific pattern clearly, she stopped it in midair. Edsack looked a little funny. Puff. The witch couldn't help laughing. It's really not her fault. This third prince is so funny. If it were her, she would just chop it down regardless of what was in front of her. You. Hearing this crisp laughter, Edsack's face became even redder with anger. He had some feelings for Triss, but now, he was embarrassed in front of a woman he cared about even a little bit, not to mention a prince. No Loan male could stand this. In particular, the Loan royal family is a standard believer in the storm. Edisic was so angry that he wanted to chop people. But Triss would not give Edisic face. The angrier he got, the happier Triss became. She even began to instigate him out of habit. Where's that arrogant look just now? You can't do it now. That's right. After all, it's such a simple test. We can understand that you want to make it a little more difficult for yourself. Isn't it too simple to just chop it off? Why don't you tear it with your hands? That's a little more difficult. Chapter 134, Hatred of the Rich. Triss excitedly put one hand on her waist and instigated Prince Edisic to tear up the symbol of her family with her hands. She felt pleasure from it. The angrier Prince Edisic was, the happier Triss was. Teacher, I don't think this test is meaningful. Edsack took a deep breath and tried his best to ignore the woman who was chatting non-stop. King George III was right about you. Shah Iyer just shook his head calmly. What do you mean? When the third prince of Loan heard his father's comments, he quietly clenched his fists. A weak character, unteachable. Shah Iyer loosened his hand, and a dead spirit caught the flag of Augustus in his hand and hung it high, as if it was some kind of mockery. Crunch. Edisic clenched his teeth, and the sword in his hand was about to slip out. Triss, who was watching the show, laughed even more happily, to the point of laughing out loud. He really said that. Edisic raised his head. Even though he had known for a long time that his father disliked him, this evaluation still made the proud prince feel ashamed. He wouldn't even want to mention you if I didn't ask. These words were obviously more hurtful, but Shah Iyer showed no mercy at all. This is not me. Prince Edisic wanted to refute. After all, he didn't think he was a coward. If it were his elder brother, he would have the same attitude. Then let's change one. Shah Iyer took out another flag and unfolded it, with the holy emblem of storm on it. Cut it off. With the sword in your hand. Shah Iyer raised the holy light of storm flag in his hand high. Looking at the familiar emblem, Prince Edisic hesitated again. The Loan royal family had always believed in the Church of the Storm. It was unrealistic for him to cut off the emblem of the Church of the Storm. Come on. Let our little prince see what thunderous means are. Shah Iyer did not say anything to persuade her. He pointed directly at Triss. The sword in Prince Edisic's hand flew out of his hand uncontrollably and flew towards the witch. Let me show you what a man is. Triss was not afraid at all, but seemed very excited. She jumped up, grabbed the sword of the third prince, and under Edisic's somewhat confused gaze, she cut the holy emblem of storm in half with one sword. Not even satisfied, she chopped it into pieces of cloth. She rolled an ice cone with her hand and threw it casually, piercing the flag of the Augustus family. The long sword hanging on the flag was pierced, stained with a layer of frost. Triss landed on the ground after a leap, with the long sword in her hand pointing at Edisic's neck. The old butler of Sequence 5 saw this and struggled violently, but was suppressed by a demigod. Edisic seemed to have lost all his energy. I stared blankly at the fragments of the flags fluttering in all directions. These intangible things are broken once they are broken. Triss did a great job. Edisic, your sword is not sharp enough. Shah Iyer said in a gloomy tone, looking somewhat disappointed. With this level, he was expected to kill the Loan nobles. Wouldn't that mean I had to log in and play for him? Teacher, that's not fair. That doesn't involve the beliefs of the witch church. Edsack wanted to argue. Shut up. You look so long-winded. If it was the symbol of the witch church, I would chop it down without hesitation. Triss is really fed up with this stupid prince. He really thinks she believes in the witch church. If I could do it again, who would choose the assassin path? You are a faithless woman. Teacher, you can understand, right? The young third prince longed for recognition. He felt that if someone could become the archbishop in the Church of Evernight, how could he be without faith? Just because I have faith doesn't mean I don't question the church's decisions. Shah-Ir was a little confused. He didn't know how to make the third prince live up to his expectations. This prince was not born a bad person, but he had some of the corruption of a knight. It was really difficult to deal with him. Your name is Triss, right? The witch church handed you over to me. Shah-Ir turned his head. Isn't there a born bad seed here? The corners of his mouth rose slightly. What do you want? Triss felt uncomfortable with the sinister gaze of, sure, but at the same time she felt a little excited. How about you help this third prince do what he can't do? As a reward, I will provide you with what you need for your promotion. I want the formula and extraordinary materials. Shah-Ir put forward his own conditions. Although he wanted the horse to run fast, he would also let the horse eat well. I can think about it. Triss didn't refuse. Having been on the streets since she was a child, she knows what choices to make and when. Prince Edisic's expression became even uglier. He felt that this was a kind of contempt from Shah-Ir towards him. What does it mean to ask a woman to do something he can't do? Although he was reluctant before, he had become accustomed to accepting arrangements and always called him Teacher Shah-Ir. After all, he was also a demigod. This teacher obviously values this woman more. How can this be tolerated? Teacher, as long as it does not harm the interests of the royal family and does not violate the laws of the kingdom of Loan, I can do many things. Edisic could no longer remain silent. If the news of his inaction reached George III, the last bit of his image in front of his father might be completely destroyed. What if I ask you to swing your sword at the nobles and merchants of the Kingdom of Loan in order to protect the interests of the common people of the Kingdom of Loan? Shah-Ir nodded. The little prince was so active that he had to be given some affirmation. Prince Edisic fell silent again. If he really did that, it would be tantamount to cutting himself off from the nobility. Is this the sacrifice you said I would make? Prince Edisic gradually realized that this was indeed a war that was no less fierce than the White Rose War. You can refuse. Shah-Ir said so. The consequence of refusing is naturally to follow the royal family's arrangement and wait until the Witch of Despair creates the Backland Smog incident. Prince Edisic chose to commit suicide because his collusion with the witch church was exposed. If you are willing to take a different path and listen to Shah-Ir, at least you can die with a little dignity. Triss, what do you mean? Shah-Ir looked at the witch and asked. Triss didn't say anything. She obviously realized that the royal family was planning to take action against the nobles. As for whether it was for the benefit of the common people, she didn't believe it. Although he didn't want to take risks, he wouldn't be so resistant if he couldn't refuse. As a former street thug, he certainly hated all nobles equally. Those beautiful eyes were full of hatred. Chapter 135 Extreme Thoughts. Backland. Here is St. Samuel's Cathedral. Inside the Chinese Gate, a confinement room. Shah-Ir was trapped here, curled up in the shadows, and he felt that the hermit's digestion progress had increased. How to say it? He didn't think the actions of the Church of Night were excessive. He even thought they were too gentle. After all, heresy was more hateful than paganism, but they just chose protective detention. It's good to develop in the church honestly. But I just couldn't help it. After all, the church obviously possesses great power, is more open-minded in thought, and pays more attention to people's livelihood than the nobles. But they just don't participate in the management of the country, which is a waste. The church may have played a role in restraining the royal family, but they did not involve ordinary nobles. Shah-Ir is a young man with devout faith. A young clergyman who has received a good education, has seen the hardships of life of the lower-class believers, and has witnessed the luxury and cruelty of the aristocracy. He certainly has the courage to make his voice heard. I'm not wrong. This is what Shah said to Daly. You may be right, but you shouldn't say it, at least not in front of the Archbishop, let alone mentioning His Holiness the Pope. Daly said with a headache. She originally thought that if she hadn't met Dunn, he might have liked this type of guy. Now she realized that she was extremely wrong. A mature man like Dunn was better. A paranoid man like Shah, no matter how attractive he was not suitable to be a lover. It was too troublesome. Sister Daly, what are you talking about? Of course I have to tell Archbishop Anthony. He is the highest leader of the Backland Diocese of the Church of the Night and someone I can trust. I believe he will understand my thoughts. As for His Holiness the Pope, he is an angel recorded in the Holy Scripture of the night. As the goddess's representative in the world, how could he be so impatient as to listen to the opinions of the goddess's followers? Shah was immersed in the worldview he created and could not extricate himself. He felt that this was how the world should be. The Church of the Night should also seek the welfare of its believers, consider the living conditions of the believers of the night, and help them solve their difficulties. When Daly Simone heard these words, she suddenly fell silent. There was no way to continue the conversation on this topic. Otherwise, if Shah was not rescued, she would be imprisoned herself. Let's talk about other things first. Dai Li was silent for a moment, and the woman's anger quickly rose. She raised her hands and rubbed her head angrily. How dare you call me Sister Dai Li? You actually want to commit suicide under my control. When Dai Li thought about how she was scared and broke out in a cold sweat, she became furious. I'm sorry, I should have stayed further away. Shah struggled hard, but his spirituality was suppressed and he could not escape Daly's rage. He also realized his mistake and apologized sincerely. It almost caused Daly psychological trauma, which was really too much. You still dare to say that? Do you believe it or not? Even if you die, I can bring your body back to life and wash my clothes and cook for me every day. Dai Li almost couldn't breathe. What does, I should stay away from you, mean? For the first time, this only child experienced how bad it felt to have a second child at home. That seems like a good idea. Deacon of the Dead or something like that, it seems pretty cool. I don't mind if you use it once in a while. Shah didn't mind, but in order not to continue to provoke Daly, he eventually changed the topic to dirty jokes. If you can't find a man in the future, I will pity you. Shah said this, and he naturally reached out and touched Daly's head. Dai Li was stunned for a moment. What did she mean she couldn't find a man? I think you should reflect on yourself here. According to my preliminary assessment, your mental problems have not improved, but have become more serious. Daly took a deep breath, turned around and left the confinement room, and reported Shah-Ir's situation, truthfully. Daly began a lengthy explanation. To put it simply, the kid didn't mean what he said before, he really suffered some mental shock. The night watchman in charge of the connection nodded. Of course they would protect their colleagues. After completing half of the process, a report of mental disorder was submitted. Although Daly is not an audience channel, she is a middle sequence who can communicate with spirits and use various ritual magic. If she says the people inside are crazy, then they are crazy. Another day passed like this. In the dark confinement room, even time seems to be exceptionally long. The only things that always accompany Shah-Ir are darkness and shadows. Although he is suppressed by the gate of Chanis, Shah-Ir can still manipulate the shadows and make some simple patterns. He practiced painting in the confinement room out of boredom. When Shah-Ir was imprisoned, he did not forget to pray devoutly. Although the dark goddess mostly handled the situation automatically, it did not stop him from harassing her in various ways. Goddess of the night, who is higher than the stars and longer than eternity, you are the Lord of Crimson, the Queen of Disaster and Terror, the Lord of Sleep and Silence. I always firmly believe that my path is correct and my ideas are not wrong. It is also said in the Dark Night ceremony that the gods will protect mortals from disasters. God loves the world, and you love us. The Church should not just deal with threats from the supernatural world. We have the ability and obligation to take on more responsibilities. I have never forgotten your teachings. What we bring to believers is a peace that comes from the heart and can last for a long time, and that they can experience even in the midst of anxiety. Under the close surveillance of the Church of Night, Shah-Ir prayed devoutly to the goddess of night every once in a while, which made the senior officials of St. Samuel Cathedral who were keeping a close eye on the place feel a little ashamed. Although the idea is a bit extreme. But he's still a good kid. The thoughts are a bit extreme, and it may be caused by the secret prayers. The top brass at St. Samuel's Cathedral reached a consensus. This is just a devout future rookie who can understand the church's painstaking efforts, voluntarily accept the punishment, has no complaints, and even absolutely believes that Archbishop Anthony is fair. So, Shah-Ir waited for his mentor, Bishop Electra. The bishop came to the detention room, looked at his students and said, "How are you reflecting? My considerations are a little impractical. We are not the only church in ruin." Shah-Ir frowned and looked at his teacher. "I'm not sure what they think, but I think they may not be as open-minded as us. We have to find a way to deal with them." Chapter 136 Baker Lang. Goddess. Bishop Electra was almost frightened to death. "You said that we will deal with them sooner or later. Will the other two churches be dealt with sooner or later? You're kidding, right?" Bishop Electra asked, looking into Shale's eyes. "Mr. Bishop, I can't do it," Shah-Ir said angrily. "It's not that he doesn't want to, but he simply can't do it." Huh. Bishop Electra breathed a sigh of relief. It was a good thing that her brain was not damaged. She still had at least the ability of logical thinking. "You wouldn't be so idle as to cause trouble for the other two churches, would you?" Bishop Electra asked just in case. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Shah-Ir and Bishop Electra stared at each other for a while. "Well, Mr. Maynard, let's talk about your punishment now." Bishop Electra got down to business. "How does the church intend to be lenient?" Shah-Ir also coughed lightly. "They were all family, so they should definitely protect each other. If you really dare to deal with me severely, don't blame me for continuing to infiltrate after my reincarnation." At that time, they really fought under the banner of the goddess of night to quell the rebellion, and whoever won would be the orthodox of night. The loser is a traitor. Due to your personal problems, you are temporarily suspended from your work in the church. You can go back and rest for a while, then come back and do some normal work. Bishop Electra told him about the church's arrangements for Shah-Ir. He gave him leave and allowed him to go back and rest, but he did not dismiss this sequence 7 clergyman. "All right. Can the salary be paid as usual?" Shah-Ir's breathing became slightly heavier. This was the key issue. If the money was paid as usual, then the Church of Night would be a conscientious enterprise. This should be considered a work-related injury. The church will pay you the basic salary as an ordinary clergyman. The bishop pointed to the head and said that brain injury was a serious matter and the church should bear some responsibility. "That's really good news." Shah-Ir nodded. This was a good thing. "Then let's go through the process." Bishop Electra was also unambiguous. After all, this was a sequence 7 Beander and a good sealed artifact, so proper inspection was necessary. Shah-Ir underwent a full physical examination by the Church of Night, and then went back to enjoy a relaxing paid vacation. Monday, September 24th, at 3 p.m., there will be a tarot meeting. A mysterious palace above the gray fog. This week, many members of the Tarot Club have experienced a lot. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool." "Good afternoon, Mr. Angel, Mr. Hanged Man, Mr. Sun." Miss Justice greeted her in a good mood. Shah-Ir nodded, then looked at Alger. This time it was his turn to submit 6 pages of Russell's diary. Alger was also very straightforward. He directly manifested 6 pages of Russell's diary and presented them to Mr. Fool. He also said, "I found a piece of information that the secret order is related to the Republic of Intis. Is this considered intelligence?" Shah-Ir blinked and finally chose to remain silent. Mr. Fool nodded. This information was basically consistent with the news he had verified. Mr. Hanged Man's information was very good. Although he still felt a little weird, after all, Emperor Russell was once the Emperor of Intis. Now the ambassador of Intis dared to assassinate the Emperor's classmate. This is bullying the Emperor. I want to issue a mission. The fool taps his fingers on the bronze tabletop. If this ambassador dares to assassinate him, he must not be let off. There is a huge gap between the identities of the two parties. If this person doesn't die, he will never have peace. Promulgate. Alger frowned. This didn't sound like a small matter, but could they do it? They couldn't solve big problems either. Audrey was also a little confused. She glanced at Mr. Angel beside her and found that he didn't react, so she calmed down too. You can choose to accept it or not. Although the fool's tone was relaxed, there was a huge sense of pressure in it. This mission comes from one of my followers. I hope to get some help. The mission of Mr. Fool's followers is not Mr. Fool's own mission. Alger needs their help to relax. This follower must be ordinary and the mission should be simple. The mission he needs to entrust is to assassinate the Intis Republic's ambassador to the Kingdom of Loan, Baker and Jean Martin. As Klein spoke, he was still thinking about what he should use as a better reward. How about free occult knowledge excerpted from a fellow villager's diary? Mr. Fool, assassinating the ambassador may cause disputes between the two countries. Audrey almost couldn't control her expression. And looking at Mr. Fool's expression, it seems like he really wants to do it himself, but there seem to be restrictions. This scene reminded Audrey of the time when the King of Loan wanted to lead the troops himself after the defeat in East Balam, but was stopped by the nobles and ministers. Do all the big shots want to lead the army in person? Very good, Mr. Fool can't easily interfere with the real world. This is a good thing. Alger was secretly happy in his heart, but he still controlled his expression well. Although it may sound a bit pretentious to say this, in the eyes of Mr. Hanged Man, the half-dead Mr. Fool is the good fool. The son, Derek, didn't understand at all, so he continued to immerse himself in his own world, recalling the happiness that canned foods of various flavors brought him. At one point, he felt that it was a betrayal to Silver City for him to enjoy such delicious food alone instead of handing it over to the six-man council of elders of Silver City. Shah-Ir also thought about it. He was free anyway, so why not kill an ambassador? Theoretically, it is possible. After the matter is accomplished, he can just push it to the Aurora Club and perfectly pass the buck. But he was a little unwilling to be Klein's thug for free. Even if he just wanted to play, he had to at least make Mr. Fool pay something. I heard that this ambassador is the head of Intis, intelligence in the Kingdom of Loan. He has secretly planned many bloody incidents, provoked relations between the various classes in Loan, and created chaos. The anti-political micro-movement has begun. I think what you said might be true. Then how did he do it? Everyone knows that he is the head of intelligence. How could he be alive and well? MI9 is not using this guy to attack their political enemies and eliminate dissidents, right? Shah-Ir felt more and more that Rune was really dirty. Now that you mention it, there is indeed some information showing that the business cooperation between some nobles and wealthy businessmen was forced to be interrupted due to the activities of this ambassador. Alger also reacted. Lowen's MI9 also treated Ambassador Baker as toilet paper. Chapter 137 Angel Level. This commission is a rather dangerous matter. This ambassador is very likely a Beander, and his level is definitely not lower than Sequence 7. As the ambassador of the Republic of Intis to the Kingdom of Loan, there will be no shortage of military attachés in the embassy. These people are at least mid-sequence Beyonders. Shah-Ir directly reported the information and dissuaded Mr. Alger, who was eager to try. Alger's identity was quite sensitive. If the members of the Church of Storms assassinated Ambassador Intis, it would be difficult to justify the matter if it became public. Mr. Angel, if this commission causes a war between the two countries, it will cause a lot of unnecessary casualties and losses, right? Justice, Audrey hopes to hear some answers from the Angel, preferably some comforting ones. Miss Justice, your consideration is unnecessary. This is a very realistic world. Going to war over the death of an ambassador will not fool the lower classes of various countries. If those congressmen are not stupid, they will definitely look for more worthy reasons to go to war from various historical events. Do you think this is some ancient Oriental country going to war over an ambassador who is seeking death? Shah-Ir refuted Miss Justice's naive ideas mercilessly. But he is an ambassador of a country after all. This represents the face of a country. Audrey still wanted to fight. But he is not a member of the Orthodox Church, and his last name is not Soren or Gustav. He is just an ordinary minor noble. You should have heard from his name that there is nothing to worry about. Shah-Ir repeated the name again, Bekram Jean Martin, without any suffixes that needed to be paid attention to. Forehead. Audrey fell silent. As a noble girl, she knew that in many cases, knowing a person's first and last name could be used to judge that person's identity and status. Even though Intis is now a republic, there is still no change in its essence. People with the last names, Soren and Gustav, were worthy of attention. Audrey thought about it and decided not to continue persuading him. Instead, she became more flexible and started to help with ideas. Since the ambassador is a bad guy and assassinating him will not cause international disputes, there is no need to hesitate. I heard that in recent years, the Fasak Empire has expanded rapidly, and has successively defeated the Kingdom of Loan and the Republic of Intis in its colonies in Balam. If the assassination goes smoothly, we can consider pushing this matter to the Fasak Empire to reduce the impact. This young girl from an aristocratic family, after learning from her surroundings, was very skilled in coming up with a relatively effective solution. Don't bother with that. Just hand it over to the Aurora Club. They will take care of everything. Or blame it on the blood cult. As long as they set up a ritual at the scene that points to the abyss and summons demons, it would be the work of the demon worshippers. Shale added. In Backland, there were too many suitable people to blame. One could even blame the vampires. The vampires had nothing to do anyway, so they could just take the blame. Mr. Angel, are you interested in this commission? Audrey looked at the angel and asked if Mr. Angel wanted to accept it, she would voluntarily give it up, or help him provide some information. I can accept this commission. Shah-Ir hesitated for a moment. He looked at the fool and wondered what kind of reward Mr. Fool could give him. What do you want in return? Fool, Klein asked with some trepidation. I hope that Mr. Fool's followers can give me some help when necessary. Shah-Ir thought about it and felt that in order to be fair, he helped Mr. Fool kill one person and Mr. Fool helped him kill one person. This was fair. Could you be more specific? You make me feel very uneasy. The fool was covered in gray fog. He looked at the angel with resentful eyes. At this moment, he hoped that it was Miss Justice who would take over his mission. Miss Justice, you don't have to give up, you can fight for it. Mr. Angel, if you need my cooperation, I will try my best to help you collect some intelligence. Audrey said with a smile in her eyes, looking at the angel beside her. Even if I won't pay you anything. Shah-Ir likes this kind of good family kid, who has good conditions and only has some spiritual pursuits, and can bring money into the group. It doesn't require payment. I'd be happy to assist you. Audrey certainly didn't care about money. She valued the spiritual enjoyment and the sense of participation in the assassination of the ambassador more. Alger thought about it and felt that since the angel had taken action, there was no need for him to intervene, so he remained silent. This matter is settled. The fool begins to read Russell's diary. On October 29, I casually asked Zeratul what his sequence was. He seemed absent-minded and told me that he was a Sequence 2 Miracle Master. This is angel level. Angels look like this. This is the first time I've seen a living angel. I continued to ask Zeratul whether a miracle worker represents something related to fate. After all, miracles always make people have various associations. Zeratul told me that the path that truly represents destiny is monsters. For miracle workers, destiny is only a part of it. High sequence beyonders are more or less involved in fate, such as the fate Trojan horse. Oh my God, I can't believe my ears. I asked Zeratul what the word, Trojan horse, meant, And Zeratul just told me that if I didn't understand it, I could also understand it as the thief of fate. Damn it, why can't I understand what Wei Ma means? How do you guys know this? This word shouldn't exist in this world, and it makes me doubt some things. Am I really the first time traveler to come to this world? Why didn't they leave something behind? Or is it because it was so long ago that it has long been lost in history? I decided to continue investigating. What if I could find some diaries? I believe that if there really are other time travelers, they would definitely leave something behind. When Klein saw what was written in the diary, his eyes narrowed. He and Russell came to the same conclusion: the word Trojan horse should not appear in this world. In other words, this word can exist, but Zeratul seems to really understand what Trojan horse means. A time traveler before Russell. Is this possible? Klein continued reading. He discovered that Russell had also asked for more information and concluded that this was sequence 2 of the thief's path. Zeratul mentioned that the Trojan horse of fate, or thief of fate, has the ability to steal fate. Angel level. Klein looked at the diary in his hand and fell into deep thought. Chapter 138 Winning. If there was another time traveler before Emperor Russell, this time traveler also became an angel level, mythical figure. This made Klein feel somewhat unreal. After all, that's an angel. They are the kind of living angels that cannot be considered human beings at all. They can be written into the ceremonies of major churches and serve the gods. Well, not the kind of angel you see at the Tarot Club, but a real angel at the Sequence 2 level. Klein continued to read the diary and got some information about the monster pathway, such as the Sequence 1 of the monster pathway is called Mercury Serpent. The following content is relatively simple. When Emperor Russell invented the practical steam engine, he had a strong sense of paranoia and always felt that there were eyes staring at him from behind. He was very worried that once he developed the steam engine, his research results would be snatched away by some big shot, and he would be suppressed and restricted, and locked up in a small dark room to contribute to someone else's brilliant life. The diary continued to turn the pages. On April 18, Emperor Russell's wife became pregnant. He wrote in his diary about the feeling of losing something. During intercourse, losing the Beyander characteristics means that the target of the combination will become pregnant. This is really very mystical. Mr. Fool feels that the strange knowledge in his mind has increased. After that, there was no useful content, nothing more than reposting dramas, music, newspapers, and anonymous serialization of cool articles. Mr. Fool skipped over the content about how Emperor Russell was scheming against his competitors, then looked at the people in the Tarot Club and said, "You can now communicate freely." As soon as the Fool finished speaking, the Sun expressed his gratitude to Shah Iyer. "Mr. Angel, thank you for the cans you gave me." Derek was a little uncomfortable with this word, but he quickly adapted. Through these cans, he was full of expectations and fantasies about the outside world, the world where angels, justice, and the hanged man existed. Send canned food. Justice, and the hanged man, looked at each other. Neither of them had thought of such a development, but Little Sun seemed very satisfied. Are the supplies in Silver City so scarce? If it weren't for Little Sun's age, Alger even wanted to say that he could also provide a large amount of beer. Anyway, as a captain, these things that can replace drinking water will not be lacking. If you can exchange some cheap beer for some things in Silver City, it will be a huge profit. Mr. Angel, how many cans of food did you give to Little Sun? Justice, Audrey asked curiously. If Xiao Taiyang really needs it, she can also provide some for free, as long as it can really help Xiao Taiyang. Broken. The reconciliation is here. Mr. Fool's relaxed expression froze. In the previous week, he had used the canned food sent by the angel to enrich his meals. Miss Justice, why are you so curious? Klein felt helpless and even uncomfortable. He was obviously thinking about the can of wolffish that had made him clean the house all day. The Fool calmly gave the angel a warning look, suspecting that the guy did it on purpose, but he had no evidence. What if he accidentally took the wrong one when purchasing? Shah Iyer gave a rough number. The fool coughed lightly, indicating that considering the special nature of Silver City, the batch of canned food would be provided to the sun in batches. No one paid attention to this little incident. Even an experienced person like Alger, who was careful enough to patiently consider every word of the fool, had never thought that a god like the fool would steal the canned food offered as sacrifice. Audrey began to exchange information about the dragon with Derek. Of course, Derek would not refuse, so the fool opened a private chat channel. A world was born in which Alger was the only one left, isolated. As a thank you, Little Sun was willing to let the angel sit in for free. The dragon clan is the mortal enemy of the giant king's court. Little Sun began to tell the story, and Shah-Ir listened quietly. He couldn't quite understand why dragons and giants had to be mortal enemies. It was fine if the elves ate dragons, but if the giants ate dragons too, would they become stupid, right? Can't the giant just eat the phoenix and the magic wolf? Giant dragons look like enlarged versions of lizards. Their bodies are covered with scales of different colors, and they have wide wings that are big enough to support their entire bodies. The dragons have many abilities, the most popular of which is the psychic dragon represented by the Dragon King, Angerveld. The audience path is also related to the psychic dragon. Shah-Ir and Audrey listened quietly, but Klein suddenly thought of something. When he died last time, he seemed to have seen the tail of a giant dragon. Dragon language, dragon tail, vertical pupils, and strange reconnaissance abilities. Wouldn't it be unlucky for him and Inns to encounter a living dragon that could transform? Klein recalled that although he was extremely panicked at the time, he probably didn't think about anything about resurrection from the dead above the gray fog. Even if the dragon could read faces, it should have been fooled by his true reaction. The most powerful of the dragon clan is the Dragon King. He also has a son, Alisuhad, who is known as the Nightmare Dragon and is also a terrifyingly powerful being. There are many legends about these two dragons. The future they claim will definitely come to pass. They dominate the minds of every creature, weaving a true nightmare in reality, causing many creatures to join in unconsciously, and finally usher in an absurd or horrifying death in the nightmare. Derek continued to introduce. The more Klein listened, the more uncomfortable he felt. How could such coincidences be so similar to sealed artifact 008? Weaving a nightmare in reality. Did the nightmare they were dragged into count? Because he was above the gray fog, Klein was still able to recall what happened at that time, but this made him feel even more terrified. Sealed object 008. It seems like something has escaped from this sealed object, but is it possible? Was what he saw real or a dream? Klein was confused. He couldn't tell the difference. He couldn't tell the difference at all. If he used his dream again, it might help, but he obviously didn't want to commit suicide again. It's really an avenue to look forward to. Audrey was very excited after hearing this. At this moment, she gave up the idea of changing her career path and felt that the audience path was very promising. This is just what is recorded in our history books. I can't guarantee that it is completely accurate. That was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Derek said modestly. Then came the historical turning point. Derek said that the Lord who created everything awakened, killed the dragons, and then destroyed the giants' royal court. Audrey frowned. In the history she knew, it was the Lord of Storms, the Eternal Sun, the God of knowledge and wisdom who led mankind to accomplish these achievements. The two exchanged information and then looked at the angel together. Why are you looking at me? Shah-Ir said helplessly. Emperor Russell said something right. History is just a little girl who has been dressed up casually. Putting aside the differences between the two histories, looking only at the similarities, omitting some unimportant content, the final conclusion is: humanity wins. Quote, Chapter 139. Didn't we miss this? Humanity won. This is undoubtedly the most correct answer. Moreover, the three gods Feng, Ji and Bai cannot be said to be false propaganda. They did lead humans to challenge dragons and giants. They just took away some of the glory of the omniscient and omnipotent. The proud son and the arrogant tyrant have never done any propaganda in this regard. This is just the personal behavior of their followers. It's a distortion, we all know it, but we're just too lazy to explain it to the world. This tarot meeting ends here. Real world. 49 Sivlas Street, West End. Shah-Ir wondered whether assassinating the ambassador could have some effect on the monk's digestion. If it's at night, in the shadows, it might help a little. Because he was temporarily dismissed from the Church of Evernight, Shah-Ir became free and began to enjoy the leisurely life of a noble youth. He came to Maynard House in Queens, found Mrs. Maynard, and asked for money, which was a direct target. £1,000. Mrs. Maynard's expression was relatively calm. It was completely acceptable for her to have an advance payment of pocket money. £10,000. Shah-Ir shook his head firmly, then reached out his hand again. It felt pretty good. He hadn't experienced anyone asking for money so confidently in a long time. Top 10,000. Mrs. Maynard was surprised. Even for Audrey, £10,000 was normally a considerable amount of pocket money. There is still some gap between the Maynard family and the Hall family. What do you want so much money for? If Shah-Ir had not worked in the Church of Night, Mrs. Maynard would have suspected that she had touched something unclean. I want to invest, I want to start a business, I want to build a factory. Shah-Ir's eyes were full of confidence. He felt that he was very capable and would definitely not lose anything. If he did lose anything, don't blame him for being so rude. What kind of factory are you going to open? Mrs. Maynard looked at her son's confident look. No matter how she looked at it, she felt that the money was going to be wasted. Backland's atmosphere is too bad. I want to open a mask production factory. Shah-Ir expressed the idea he had prepared for a long time. You have a good idea. But have you ever thought about who you are going to sell the masks you produce to? Mrs. Maynard didn't want to discourage the child's enthusiasm, so she could only speak tactfully. Of course I have thought about it. There are many heavily polluting factories in Backland, and the safety of these workers cannot be guaranteed. I think the bosses of these factories have an obligation to purchase a batch of basic masks for these workers. Shah-Ir reviewed the situation and felt that there was no problem. He would build the factory first while Etisac would launch a strong attack. Then, he happened to enjoy a wave of policy benefits. What makes you think that? Mrs. Maynard smiled at first, then realized something was wrong and changed her tone. I know what you're thinking. I'll ask around in Backland's circle. If it's appropriate, I'll agree to this. In fact, she was not very optimistic about this matter, because she was from the new party and was very clear about the temperament of these new party nobles. Instead of expecting them to increase labor costs, it would be better to hope that the god of steam and machinery would make these steam creations move on their own and directly liberate all mankind. That's fine too. Shah-Ir didn't worry about it. He knew that the money would come sooner or later. He could use the money to hold various banquets, but it was impossible not to have the money to support his investment in starting a business. Shouldn't you be working at the church at this time? Mrs. Maynard asked curiously. She was still very clear about the working hours of the clergy. I'm on vacation. Although the work in the church is good, if you only want to help the goddess's followers, it is easy to accumulate some pressure for promotion. Shah-Ir said directly that he had indeed accumulated some mental pressure, such as the guilt of lying. Since you are resting, take a good rest. You can also attend some noble banquets and communicate more with people of your age. Mrs. Maynard couldn't see that Shah-Ir was under pressure, but she still encouraged Shah-Ir to participate in more gatherings in upper-class circles. Knowing more real-time news will be beneficial to his development. Are there any banquet invitations recently? Shah-Ir asked with a smile. Mrs. Maynard also smiled and began to introduce everyone to Shah-Ir one by one. What Shah-Ir cares about, of course, are the banquet invitations involving the assassination targets. Among them, the one that deserves attention is the ball invitation from Countess Giulia. This ladies' ball will invite ambassadors from various countries stationed in Rune. Naturally, this also includes the Intis Kingdom's ambassador to Loan, Bekran Jean Martin. Shah-Ir plans to carry out the fool's assassination plan while on vacation. As for Klein, he was also a little afraid. He was mainly afraid that before the Tarot Club members could assassinate Baker, Baker would send someone to assassinate him. Although Klein believed in Angel's business ability, after such a long time together, he also knew that Angel's efficiency was not worth expecting. Last Friday, Klein had intended to hire a Beander bodyguard at the Brave Bar, but was rejected. When the other party heard that this matter might involve a person with state support, he directly refused to get involved in such a matter. Even so, without a bodyguard, Klein still felt uneasy, which directly affected Klein's mentality when he was on a mission to catch an adulterer. Although he finally relied on the Beander's ability to successfully collect evidence of a certain gentleman's infidelity. When Klein returned to the Backlund General Affairs Company on Minsk Street to submit his mission, he suddenly thought of something. He asked the familiar receptionist, "Does the Integrated Service Company also provide security services?" "Of course, Mr. Moriarty, our credibility in this area of work is also very secure." The receptionist patiently introduced it. Of course, Klein knew that the Comprehensive Service Company had security business, which was one of their basic businesses. It's just that his affairs involve extraordinary people. Klein still thought that the predecessor of this security company might be a gang organization. Of course, a small gang is nothing. But if Merceau, the executioner of the Zemanger party, could implicate an ambassador of Intis, then would the same be true for a gang that is better developed than the Zemanger party? If so, then perhaps it would be possible to cause some restraint on the ambassador of Intis, forcing him to delay his attack on himself. Even if he was wrong, the Wei Li party should have its own extraordinary people. At least ask about the hiring price to test the waters. "Ma'am, what I want to ask is a more private and professional security service." Klein lowered his voice and tilted his head slightly. Chapter 140, Poor God Package. Special Services. The receptionist looked at Detective Charlotte Moriarty. She almost developed an occupational disease, but she adjusted herself quickly in the end. "You mean a more professional security service?" The receptionist smiled. She knew some wealthy people who had special needs for hiring bodyguards, and she was also fortunate enough to learn some mysterious things. But the detective in front of her looked very gentle and polite, and didn't seem to be related to the mysterious world. He also didn't look that rich, nor did he seem to have extra money to enjoy high-quality services. This made her unable to think for a moment, and she almost misunderstood something. Yes, they are more professional, stronger than ordinary bodyguards. Klein didn't know whether his description was accurate. He missed the Blackthorn Security Company. Why didn't Backlund have such a professional security company? Or did he not find the right place, or did he not have the relevant channels? "Please follow me." The receptionist's tone changed. This detective is really a hidden talent. Her eyesight was deceived and she almost thought he was just an ordinary detective. Is it true? Klein didn't expect this, but he still followed and walked into a room for internal transactions. After the receptionist brought the person over, she closed the door and left. The dim light was a bit depressing. Klein couldn't see the target's specific appearance. He could only barely confirm that it was a man. Everything else was hidden in the shadows and difficult to see clearly. "Speak up for what you want," the gentleman in the shadows asked. "I need a bodyguard. The kind of bodyguard that surpasses ordinary people and possesses some supernatural powers." Klein answered with concentration. "Your request is quite normal," the man in the shadow said as he played with the dagger in his hand. He had obviously seen many strange and special requests that could not be told to others. "Is this a possibility?" Klein's heart moved. "This gang doesn't look simple. Please describe it briefly." "No one would need a bodyguard for no reason. We also need to verify the general information before we can confirm whether we have enough capabilities to take on this commission," Shah-Ir said casually while playing with the shadow dagger in his hand. Of course he knows. This was originally Miss Sharon's business, but after many twists and turns, it finally fell into his hands. "I have offended a great man. There may be a country behind him to support him." When Klein said this, he felt a little agitated and embarrassed. When he said this in the Brave Bar, Sequence 6 Marich was so frightened that his face changed. He doubted whether the other party was deliberately looking for trouble. The fact that you can come here alive to find a bodyguard means that the other party has a country to support them is not that true. The other party should be an official, but his status is not that high. MI9, or some other important government department? Shah-Ir asked, playing the role of a qualified craftsman. So calm. Klein was also a little surprised. Isn't this attitude a bit arrogant? Could it be that the people behind this gang are not from Loan? Not MI9. There was only so much information Klein could reveal. In fact, he did not want to reveal his identity, but when it came to finding a bodyguard, he had to show up in person. A big reason why he was so reckless now was due to Master Intis, who was so overbearing in Backland and didn't give him any chance to survive. It looks like there's some trouble. We can take on this mission, but how much reward can you offer? Shah-Ir doubted whether the fool had enough money to pay for this commission. Although I haven't paid much attention to it, a fool shouldn't have too much money. I can offer special rewards, or a certain gold list. Klein thought about his assets, gritted his teeth, and decided to bet everything for his own safety. As for the price, if there is no danger during the employment period, the starting price is 500th place. If you are in danger, it depends on the situation. If you can't come up with £1,000, I can also provide you with cheaper services, such as a boat or train ticket to leave Backland, and a set of forged ID documents. Shah-Ir chuckled. He felt somewhat apologetic. After all, he had emptied Mr. Fool's family fortune, which was a small sin. Klein hesitated. Why didn't he think of this before? He could leave Backland first and wait until Mr. Angel completed the commission, or other members of the Tarot Club completed the commission to assassinate the master. Then he could come back. This would save money and be safe. Thinking of this, Klein's expression changed unconsciously. Instead of spending a lot of money to hire a bodyguard, why not go out and avoid the limelight? We can provide a full range of services and get you out of Backland safely. If you pay more, I can escort you for a longer period of time and take you somewhere safely. Shah-Ir is not as bad as other time travelers. He didn't intend to cheat Klein out of all his money, and he also tried to help him save some money. Can I think about it? Klein was tempted, but in order to prevent black robbing black, he decided to take the lead. Casual. Shah-Ir said indifferently. If he offended other Beyonders, Klein might be able to run away, but the hunter was a sequence 5 of the diviner path, and Klein did not know how to hide traces of mysticism. Running away would not solve the problem. He could only seize the opportunity. What if this master of secret dolls was too lazy to chase him that far? Even if you just take the train a day in advance, you can make a quick difference. If I want to leave Backland temporarily, I hope you can escort me. How much does it cost? Klein decided to ask the price first. At least £300. Shah-Ir quoted a friendly price. If you don't want to spend money, £20 is enough for a ticket. We will arrange for you to board the ship and leave now. Shah-Ir thought for a moment and said, what if Mr. Fool is more frugal? You guys are really professionals. After hearing so many price lists, Klein smiled and said goodbye. He wanted to go get some divination. After leaving Backland General Affairs Services, he returned to No. 15 Minsk Street, came to the sacred bathroom, took off the citrine pendant. He supported himself with his hands, closed his eyes, and began to recite in a low voice. Will it be dangerous for me to leave Backland and seek temporary refuge alone? After 7 times, the results of the pendulum divination were not ideal. This is really targeting me. Klein gritted his teeth. What a grudge. Wasn't it even possible for him to leave Backland? Klein closed his eyes again. He wanted to rely on his detective's keen analytical ability through repeated attempts to find a safe path in danger. Chapter 141 Intis's Humor. Train, Gangster, Assassination, Trustworthy, Escape. Through divination, Mr. Detective quickly sorted out his thoughts based on the information he had. He still had to run, and run as fast as possible. Klein did not hesitate much and began to raise money. I never thought that one day I would rely on the protection of the mafia. Mr. Fool sighed, lamenting the impermanence of life, because the troubles caused by contact with the gangs had to be solved by another gang in Backland in the end. Can't the officials of Lowen crack down on these local gangs? They even dare to directly threaten the safety of the middle class. Klein had no choice but to wait until the evening to attend an extraordinary gathering, and then use the resources at his disposal to exchange for something that could protect him and some money. As for Shah Iyer, he was very calm. No, it was more than just calm. He was considering whether he should discuss with Miss Justice and take on the task of assassinating the master and protecting the fool himself. He could either, or take advantage of this opportunity to eat up Mr. A in one bite. Shah Iyer was a little hesitant. Wouldn't I get diarrhea after eating it? He began to pray to the fool. Fool who does not belong to this world, mysterious ruler above the gray fog, king of yellow and black who controls good luck, I would like you to tell Miss Justice that I have encountered some problems here and may not be able to get away. She can try to carry out the task of assassinating Ambassador Intis first. On the other side, Mr. Fool, who had hurriedly arrived above the gray fog, slapped his forehead. He had guessed correctly before. Mr. Angel's efficiency was indeed hard to praise. He's still aware of it this time. Send a message and ask Miss Justice to get ready first. Klein was helpless. No wonder there was still danger after taking over. It turned out that the problem was with Mr. Angel. He was obviously the one who knew the most and seemed the most capable in the Tarot Club. He should have been the epitome of reliable. Why did he always fail halfway? Since this matter involved him, Klein directly forwarded the image and sound of the prayer to Miss Justice. When planning the banquet, Audrey, who had collected enough information on what to do, had a deep red flash in her eyes. Mr. Angel has something going on. Can you let me prepare first? Audrey was stunned for a moment, then sighed, Mr. Angel is really busy. Mr. Angel trusts me so much, I have to take action too. Although it was a bit abrupt for the Angel to say this in the middle of the conversation, Audrey Hall felt the Angel's trust and she was happy about this trust and recognition. Mr. Angel said this because he really trusts me to do a good job. Audrey couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. She was in a very good mood and planned to entrust Furs and Zio to find someone to assassinate Baker. But she also realized a problem. After all, she is an ambassador, and the money required for assassination must be not small. Even if she is Hall's daughter, it will take at least a day or half a day to prepare and get the money together. Since I joined the Tarot Club, I feel like I have less and less money to spend. The blonde girl rarely felt such financial constraints, and she was now almost impatient to become an adult so that she could get her share of the dowry as soon as possible. Tuesday. Shah Iyer attended a ball hosted by Countess Wolf. He held a glass of red wine and chatted casually with a noble lady, observing the atmosphere of the ball. This was a bit impolite, so Shah Iyer looked around and asked about gossip, and achieved some results. He saw diplomats from many countries, and there were no women among them. Whether it was Intis, Fainaport, or Faisak, all the ambassadors were men. The Church's efforts over the years are still not enough. Although there have been some results in ensuring the financial security of both men and women after marriage, the number of women in politics is still. Shah Iyer originally wanted to say very little, but after thinking about it, he realized that it was not a little, but almost nothing. Even women from the aristocratic class can have influence, but cannot directly participate in politics. He began to wonder why men from different worlds had such a tacit understanding with each other. That's very conservative thinking. Although Hazel has no interest in politics, she still gets indignant when the issue of women's status is brought up. I also think this is wrong. Even small countries in the central part of the northern continent, such as Renberg and Seeger, can have embassies in Backland. Then the colonies of the southern continent, those larger countries, should be eligible to send ambassadors to establish an embassy in Backland even if they have lost part of their sovereignty. The kingdom's current attitude is really disappointing. Shah Iyer changed the subject and avoided talking about the issue of women's status. Hazel was also used to Shah-Ir's conversation style. She nodded and said, I think you are right. Even colonies have dignity. The kingdom should respect them more. At this time, Shah-Ir noticed that dear Miss Justice was holding her favorite champagne and starting her own accidental activities. What do you see her doing? Hazel was a little dissatisfied. Audrey's more delicate facial features made her feel a little uncomfortable. It's just a normal choice. There are so many people here, I choose the good-looking and interesting ones and focus my attention on them. Isn't that normal? As a thief, you should know very well what kind of gems people would covet. As Shah-Ir spoke, he glanced warily at a large golden retriever squatting in the corner. Should he say that it was worthy of its racial talent? Pets have much stronger perception than their owners. But she's just a normal person. When Hazel heard Shah-Ir praising Audrey, she became even more unhappy. Although she was inferior to Miss Hall in all aspects, she was an extraordinary person. I don't care about that. Shah-Ir's light words made Hazel so angry that she almost jumped up and bit him. On the other hand, Audrey has already made contact with Ambassador Baker from Intis. The ambassador was very courageous. Although Audrey's status was not ordinary, he did not feel inferior at all. Instead, he praised her enthusiastically. If it weren't for Backland's culture, I would really like to call you my angel. Please don't use the term angel indiscriminately. Audrey suppressed her nausea and maintained an elegant smile. A listener, with very good hearing, overheard the conversation between the two. He suppressed his laughter and imitated Hazel, learning how Becker winked and speaking in an Intis-style tone. After spending a wonderful time with a beautiful girl, most Loan men would say, I want to smoke a cigarette, while Intis men would say, oh, baby, I have to get back before my wife finds me. Ha ha. Hazel sneered twice, her eyes full of mockery. Actually, these gentlemen from Intis don't have to rush back, because their wives are definitely not in a hurry to go back. Maybe they need a female cigarette to relax, too. Shah-Ir spread his hands and said. Hazel couldn't help laughing, then she frowned, glared at Shah-Ir, and then laughed again. 142 True Friends. Chapter 142 True Friends. Because of Russell's publicity, Intis is always so desirable. This is a magical country, where openness is the main theme. Although only in some aspects, they are open. Men and women have achieved a certain degree of equality, which is an achievement that the Church of Evernight has not been able to achieve in the Kingdom of Loan after working hard for so long. The so-called miracle created by the magical Church of the Eternal Sun. Although the composition is somewhat complicated, the sun of Intis does shine equally on everyone. Baker was unaware of Shah-Ir's teasing behind his back. At this moment, he was just content with Audrey's polite compliments and couldn't wait to respond, which he thought was romantic. There is always an extra beauty in people who can make fun of themselves. Even though Audrey had rich social experience, she was stunned for a moment before she figured out how to respond tactfully, or how to give a tactful compliment. Miss Audience noticed that Mr. Baker was about to continue his joke about Intis. Her beautiful green eyes moved and she saw Shah-Ir and Hazel who were looking at her. The corners of her mouth curled up, and she found an excuse to get away. Sorry, my friend is looking for me. Audrey said apologetically to Ambassador Backland. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Baker knew it was just an excuse, but he wasn't angry. Beautiful women always have some privileges, and he was ready to try again next time. Audrey walked away gracefully and decisively without looking back, not even for a second. Baker looked at Audrey's back and noticed that there were two young men and women sitting where she was going. They also noticed his gaze. This Sequence 6 conspirator could see the disgust in Hazel's eyes, but he didn't care at all. In his eyes, a little disgust from a beautiful woman was actually a challenge. Shah-Ir's eyes were calm. He nodded to Baker and silently uttered two words. Rubbish. Although he is almost the same, this does not prevent him from picking on Baker, and he can indeed say so. After all, at the angel level, angels who have some personal problems and have not gone crazy can be considered morally noble. Baker frowned. He didn't seem to have offended the other party. But when he saw Audrey sitting there and thought of the friend Audrey had just mentioned, Baker was no longer angry. The naive young man had no idea of the charm of a mature man and could only feel helpless and angry. He simply disdained to respond. Baker turned around with his glass in hand and went after other beautiful women. He had not forgotten the purpose of coming to the party. He would not put the cart before the horse and waste his precious time on other men just because of a small provocation. Although the man was really good looking, he was a conservative in India and he did not accept homosexuality. Nice to meet you here. Is this mismatched? I didn't realize you two knew each other. Audrey greeted Shah Iyer very naturally. After all, they knew each other. If you had to say it, they were friends. But Audrey didn't know that Shah Iyer had reported her to the Church of Evernight, saying that she was a Beander. If she knew, she might not be angry. After all, Shah Iyer only reported her and not Susie, which was very friendly. Ms. Hall, you can just call Hazel by her first name. Mismatched doesn't sound nice. Shah Iyer looked at Audrey and said. Hazel, who was standing by, heard Shah Iyer degrading her last name like that. She really wanted to kill Shah Iyer with a knife, but Audrey was still here after all, so she had to remain elegant. Just call me Hazel. Hazel took a deep breath, turned her head and smiled. She didn't look angry at all. Even if I'm mad as hell. What do you mean by how we knew each other? She also wanted to ask, how did you two know each other? You can also just call me Audrey. Miss Audience thought Hazel was a very interesting lady. Although a thief should be smarter, Hazel still seemed a little naive in front of Audrey. It's really hard for you to deal with that ambassador. I've also heard of his reputation. I thought he should be very experienced, but judging from your reaction, his self-righteous pride is obviously at odds with his past experience. Shah Iyer made the comment that it might be due to the matching mechanism that the Intis ambassador had rarely played against the wind. If he could really pretend to be able to easily gain Audrey's initial favor, Shah Iyer would applaud him. I have met many gentlemen. But someone like him can use strong perfume, dirty words, and vulgar taste to make me want to vomit as soon as I see him. Audrey didn't continue. This shows that he is very smart. He didn't really want to attack you, so he didn't disguise himself. Instead, he acted in the most relaxed and natural way to see your reaction. Shah Iyer found it a little funny. Even Audrey couldn't have everything go her way. It was inevitable that she would encounter unpleasant things. He really didn't hide his character. He had no respect for women. Audrey acknowledged this, and she was also secretly shocked. She had never thought that Shah Iyer could see these things from a distance. Such observation skills amazed even her. The audience was worthy of being an official Beander of the church. Let's not talk about the ambassador. Hazel interrupted their conversation. She was still here. These two people were just chatting so naturally. Who to talk about then? The gentleman who has been observing this place, wanting to come over but hesitant. Shah Iyer glanced at a certain young gentleman. There are so many people who care about Miss Justice. There are probably quite a few friends like this. Cons. Audrey understood. He may be trying to remind me that Ambassador Baker is a dangerous man. I'll excuse myself for a moment. Audrey said, then stood up to comfort her true friend. When did you two meet? Why do you seem to have such a good relationship? Hazel asked directly once Audrey left. At the dance. As for a good relationship, do you think Audrey would have a bad relationship with you as long as you were a normal person who dressed neatly? She is not like you, she is not so proud of having mastered supernatural powers. Shah Iyer teased Hazel directly. He felt that Audrey's growing environment was rather special, and the education she received seemed to have a bit of a respectful and courteous flavor. How can you say that to me? You're comparing her to me. Hazel's eyes widened, she felt betrayed. Chapter 143 Respect for Freedom. You can only choose one between me and her. There was no reason for this, Hazel wanted to say this. But she finally restrained herself, though she still felt a little uncomfortable. In her opinion, they had a common secret and their relationship should be closer. You are really not suited to the thief's path. It would be good if you take the path of the singer. Shah-Ir reached out and touched Hazel's head. He actually wanted to talk about the honest way. But in the mystical sense, the path of the honest man has been tainted by the goddess of night. I'll try my best to play the role of a con man. Hazel was a little irritated when she was touched on the head, but Shah-Ir's words calmed her down. The education she received since childhood made her lack sufficient enthusiasm for fraud. Stealing is a little better, as you can return the stolen items, and there are no specific regulations on what you can steal. Shah-Ir and Hazel continued to chat, and after a while, Audrey came over. She sat down with a glass of champagne. After collecting some information, Audrey also chose this good position to slack off. The configuration of one man and one woman will not be easily disturbed. The configuration of one man and two women will not be easily disturbed. Even if you want to invite any of these three people to dance, you have to think about it. After all, this may cause some embarrassment. Moreover, the location here is very good. You can observe the dance floor and better play the role of a mind reader, or simply judge the thoughts of Shah-Ir and Hazel. You guys don't seem too enthusiastic about this dance. Audrey smiled with twinkling eyes. She was of course well aware of this kind of thing. If it was inconvenient for the noble men and women of Loan to spend time together in private, they would have some private communication in such public occasions. If the atmosphere wasn't that kind of feeling, she wouldn't come over to disturb. I'm actually quite keen on it. Shah-Ir just didn't feel like dancing right now. He prefers watching other people dance. Watching them immersed in this bustling prosperity, witnessing with their own eyes the shadow swallowing everything. You're not interested in this dance, are you? Audrey has now begun to get used to Shah-Ir's speaking style, which sometimes even makes her feel inexplicably familiar with it. People who can move are always more attractive than objects. It's just that right now, in this entire dance, there's no one more worthy of my attention than this glass of wine. Shah-Ir raised his glass to the two ladies. Although Shah-Ir's area attack accidentally injured Audrey and Hazel, the two still planned to forgive him. Respect freedom, respect life, respect the goddess. The three people's wine glasses clinked lightly. Cheers to you. Shah-Ir drank the red wine in the glass. Although he didn't like beer, this red wine tasted pretty good. Audrey and Hazel looked at each other, then looked away tacitly and drank their respective champagnes or red wine. Shah-Ir leaned back in his chair again. He shook the remaining wine in the glass, savoring the flavor of the red wine, and suddenly thought of something. Didn't Emperor Russell invent happy water? Is there anything else he didn't copy? Shah-Ir's absent-minded look caused some misunderstandings among the two girls next to him, especially the mind reader. Audrey looked at Shah-Ir, who was concentrating on thinking about something. She gave up the idea of speaking, not wanting to interrupt Shah-Ir's train of thought. She also sorted out the intelligence she had just collected. Bekram might be a Sequence 6 conspirator. He might have an unknown Sequence 5 assistant beside him, as well as a varying number of Beander spies hidden in certain places. This information is enough to help Mr. Angel. If Mr. Angel is still busy, perhaps Furs and Zio will bring her some surprises. As we all know, silence is contagious. Hazel also began to think about how she should complete the role of a scammer. She and Audrey grew up in very different environments. If Audrey's family had instilled in her the idea of being upper class since she was a child, then shamelessness and lies were as common a passport as perfume. In some ways, Hazel's family places more emphasis on the cultivation of Hazel's moral character and knowledge. This resulted in Audrey being able to thrive no matter which path she took after getting through the initial adjustment period. However, Hazel was not quite used to the thief's way. After all, as a proud girl, she even disdained to lie, and would certainly not be used to further fraud. The silence of these three people caused a little attention at the party. Audrey herself has a certain degree of popularity, and the fact that these three people sat together, not saying a word as if they were in a standoff, inevitably made some people feel strange. But these three people think that it is good to ignore each other, and they don't think there is anything wrong with it. Only the big golden retriever Susie noticed the little incident at the dance. She wagged her tail and continued to observe secretly. Wednesday, September 26th. Furs and Miss Hugh received instructions from Audrey. They decided to act as a middleman and make some extra money. So they headed to the extraordinary party that Mr. A himself had organized. Submitted a commission to Mr. A to assassinate Ambassador Intis. Mr. A did not refuse. As long as the money was in place, he didn't care whether he was an ambassador or not. The price of food in Backland has increased again. At this rate, even the fat and juicy pork slices sect won't be able to afford meat slices. One of the more humane aspects of the Aurora Society is that, although they themselves eat people, they are not completely crazy. They just eat people, but they do not require ordinary believers of the Aurora Society to eat people. Klein here. He had also gathered enough money and secret weapons, and was ready to have members of the Backland Integrated Affairs Services Company escort him out of Backland. After thinking about it, he gave up the idea of leaving by train. Since you can't avoid it, taking a boat is a good option. It is more convenient to fight on board and it is less likely to hurt innocent people. Dangers on ships and steam trains. Klein chose the former. After all, he could swim, and jumping off a boat wouldn't necessarily mean death, but jumping off a train, even for a clown, would require a certain amount of courage. Are you my bodyguard? Klein looked at the bodyguard in front of him, who was wearing a black robe and covered his figure tightly. He suddenly felt that he was a little unreliable. Could he be a wanted criminal who was hiding from the public? Even if he was a gangster, being a bodyguard shouldn't be a problem like this, right? Whether it's at the train station or at security check before boarding a ship, you will definitely be checked if you dress like this. Shaw Iyer didn't say anything. He took a step forward and then merged into Klein's shadow. A bed ticket fell out of the shadows, with the departure date written on it. At least, go to the dock area first. Klein was a little uncomfortable with the ground, but he didn't dare to use too much force, as if he was afraid of stepping on someone. He didn't like this kind of close protection very much. Although it was considerate and looked professional, it always reminded him of some bloody scenes of backstabbing. 144 Rosago. Chapter 144 Rosago. Klein wanted to transfer to Backland's dock area, follow the river all the way to Pritz Harbor, and then occupy it at all times. When the crisis is resolved, he will immediately take a ship back to Backland. He had paid the rent for half a year in Backland. If he left now, the economic loss would be unbearable. Moreover, he had just gotten familiar with the environment in Backland. If he left now, where would he go? Would he drift in this world like a rootless duckweed? Klein pressed the black hat on his head as he boarded the ship. He looked down and saw a shadow extending from his feet. He couldn't tell at all that there was a Beander hiding inside. Even if I turn on my spiritual vision, it still doesn't work very well. This is simply the perfect assassin. He beeped, stood on the railing of the plywood, and watched the ship slowly leave the dock. The bad news is that in this state, it is not suitable to go above the gray fog. Even though the message prompt above the gray fog sounded, he was unable to log in and could only occupy it for a while. It shouldn't be a big deal. The villa of the Earl of Hall. Audrey wanted to inform the Angel that she had already found someone to take over the task of assassinating Ambassador Intis, so Mr. Angel didn't need to worry. But after waiting for a while, there was no response from Mr. Fool, which even made Miss Justice a little suspicious. Maybe something happened to Mr. Fool's follower again. Maybe there is another possibility, Mr. Fool is sleeping. After all, he is a big figure in the mysterious world. His current state is like that of someone who has just woken up from a deep sleep and is full of interest in everything new in this world. Backland, West District, Intis Embassy. There's a dance going on here. As the ambassador of Intis and the head of Intis, intelligence in Backland, Backland must of course organize various activities to obtain various intelligence from Backland. Moreover, at such a dance party, he could also meet some beautiful women, and the funds he spent were approved by the Republic of Intis, so of course he was happy to do so. Shah Iyer also came here. Although he had mocked Baker, it did not affect him. He came to attend the ball of Ambassador Intis. Even if he did not receive an invitation, it was still easy for him to sneak in. At this time, he was listening to Beklin's endless talk about the superiority of the Republic of Intis, how the nobles had lost their previous status, and how the emerging, third class, and national representatives were the masters of the country. Shah Iyer just found it funny. Although the administrative system and efficiency of the Loan Kingdom were often mocked by Alger, how Sway still had the mobility to rival that of a curly-haired baboon. In the Republic of Intis, 800 congressmen sat together, arguing loudly, and almost fighting each other's brains out for their own interests. The parliament was really an interesting place. After the death of Emperor Russell, although Intis was weakened in foreign wars, internal power struggles, factions fighting openly and secretly, and tripping each other up were common occurrences. This is very close to reality. Intis lost its conqueror, and only a group of conspirators were left. The countries in the northern continent have a tacit understanding that the king of each country cannot exceed sequence 5. I wonder if the Speaker of the Parliament of Intis can break through this limit. Theoretically, it is not possible. After all, there was a Russell. The situation of the Intis Council is probably beyond repair. Shah Iyer was very confused as to why the Hunter Path was circulating so well in the Republic of Intis. If it is just the first 3 sequences, it would be good to stop at sequence 7, the Arsonist, or sequence 8, the Challenger. But the potion formula of the sequence 6 conspirator was not that difficult to obtain, which made him feel that there was a deep sense of evil in it. Shah Iyer read Baker's mind, ignored certain colors, and felt that Intis was really bad. Especially in Trier, the capital of Intis. To put it bluntly, the underground of this place is the ruins of the War of Gods, where an important battle of the War of the Four Emperors took place in the 4th era. It is really hard for the people of Trier to live in such a place. As for Baker, he didn't know that his past life was being turned over page by page like a book. His attention at this moment was focused on the young girl in a crimson dress standing at the edge of the balcony. He took a quick look and found that she looked a little unfamiliar, which meant that the girl's family background was average and he, as an ambassador, could easily win her heart. Chatting, holding hands, dancing. "My beautiful lady, there is a bottle of 1286 Olmeyer wine in my room." Bakerland almost made it clear. "Okay." The young girl agreed. Shah Iyer also wanted to taste what the wine tasted like. He decided to wait a little before tasting it, to give Bakerland some time to mourn his life. Baker was obviously reluctant to take out the bottle of wine, and he couldn't wait to go to bed. Mr. A, the messenger of the Aurora Society, crawled out from the belly of the girl. His face was as strange as a woman's, and his body was wriggling. The figure blooming like a rose has a unique charm that is breathtaking. This made Bakerland lose consciousness for a moment. Because at this time, Mr. A was already naked and holding a straight and dark sword in his hand towards him. If you love him, then do a vertical jump. When Shah Iyer passed through the wall and walked into the room, what he saw was a body split in 2 on the ground. Mr. A was very professional and did not even spare the soul. He picked up the dark red Beander characteristics on the ground, and then picked up a thumb-sized puppet head with completely black eyes. A Beander feature and a good seal. The corpse on the ground gradually grew colder, and the bright red blood was quickly covered by the shadow. He opened the wardrobe, changed into casual clothes, and placed the puppet's head in his left chest pocket. The flesh on the surface of the puppet's body began to wriggle like granulation tissue, and the face also underwent some changes. When the military attachés of the embassy finally heard the noise and rushed over, they saw a broken female body on the bed, with her young and delicate facial features still vaguely visible. Shah Iyer took out the 1286 Olmeyer wine that Bakerin had not had time to taste. He calmly poured himself a glass and poured the rest on the ground, letting the bright red wine spread on the carpet and gradually mix with the blood on it. "Lord Rosigo, what's going on?" At this time, an embassy military attaché who had finally come to his senses asked. He was not surprised by Rosago's indifference. This was the way the extraordinary people of the secret order were. This was their usual style, mysterious and low-key. Indifferent. You don't have to investigate. I can't find out anything. The murderer is at least a sequence 5 Beander. Judging from the traces at the scene and the way Bakram died, he is at least a sequence 5 shepherd. Sure, or, Rosago, took a sip of red wine, calm and indifferent. Chapter 145 The long-awaited assassination. Night. On the ship, Klein was not used to life on the ship, and he couldn't sleep at all. In the cabin, the candlelight was bright, stretching the shadow very long. He looked at his own shadow, feeling at ease at one moment and uncomfortable at another. Anyway, he couldn't fall asleep. Klein held a quarter penny in his hand and threw it again. He didn't know how many times he had repeated this process, and the result was almost the same every time. There was no danger. This feeling is heartbreaking. Apparently, Ambassador Intis also has an extraordinary person on his side who can interfere with divination, and perhaps he uses the same method as him. The ability of divination feels so annoying when it is suppressed. What's even more sad is that the bodyguard that I paid for disappeared after he merged into shadow. If the shadow had not occasionally moved in response, Klein would have almost thought that the other party had tricked him onto the ship and then ran away. Whether he was alive or dead, or whether he was assassinated, had nothing to do with the other party. It would be better to say that he is dead, so there is no need to worry about being complained about. Look at it in a positive way, at least the other party has a good reputation and doesn't intend to run away after defrauding your money. Klein had comforted himself in this way. He even judged based on his own experience that if there was an assassination, it would definitely happen at night, in such a closed room. This would be the perfect assassination opportunity and would not attract too much attention. Klein planned not to sleep tonight. According to his divination and judgment, Ambassador Intis would send someone to deal with him in the next 1 or 2 days, and there was a high possibility that he would be dealt with tonight. So a night passed. Klein rubbed his temple and cursed Ambassador Intis over and over again in his heart. Couldn't the assassination be done more quickly? Why was he so slow? He just sat there all night. Although I went to lie down on the bed later, I was afraid of falling asleep, so I forced myself to sit up and stayed up all night, feeling a little exhausted. Are you still there? Klein asked quietly to the shadow under his feet. The shadow shook. Are you sleepy? Klein felt that since he hadn't slept all night, Shadow must have also not slept all night. The shadow under my feet swayed, and the shadow on the ground squirmed, revealing a row of rune words. I slept well last night. Crunch. After seeing these words, Klein felt his headache getting worse. He admitted that while he was guarding against a possible attack by Ambassador Intis, he was also guarding against this bodyguard, who he didn't know whether he could trust or not, but whose price was acceptable anyway. But this. How could the bodyguard sleep when his employer didn't? How could he sleep? You didn't give me enough money. The shadow on the ground squirmed again. The meaning was simple. You only offered 300 or 400 pounds, and you want him to be on duty 24 hours a day. When Klein saw this, he suddenly wasn't so angry anymore. His staying up late wasn't in vain. If he really slept, the bodyguard would also be asleep, and someone would sneak in at night and kill him without him knowing it. Klein didn't expect that the guy in the shadow would care much about his life safety. Even if the opponent's Beander sneaked in, killed him and left, he might not notice the Beander hiding in the shadow. I might be in danger, but he might not be. I'm going to take a nap. Can you keep an eye on me? Klein still felt that he needed to get enough rest. The assassination had not yet arrived. If he was exhausted now, he would be dead. Although I still don't trust this bodyguard, it seems that there is no other way now. I need breakfast. The shadows on the ground were squirming. Although Klein wanted to go to sleep right away, he still had to eat breakfast. Besides, shouldn't the employer pay for it? I see. Klein was helpless, but he had to do it. He left the room and went to the ship's restaurant. He ordered a meal for himself and packed an extra portion. When he returned to the room again, before Klein could say anything, the shadow under his feet spread out and directly rolled up the packaged food. There was no sound of chewing, and the shadow returned to calm. What kind of extraordinary ability is this? Klein was somewhat envious. He even felt that this ability was a bit excessive. However, when he thought of Dun's ability to dream walk, he felt relieved. Perhaps only by becoming a Sequence 7 could he usher in a small qualitative change. Mr. Fool didn't waste his time this time. He fell asleep immediately. He was still worried, but he felt that he might have more chances to revive. So there was no need to be too nervous. He didn't sleep for long, just a few hours, then got up and continued to stay alert to guard against possible attacks. But still nothing happened. Klein went out again halfway through and brought back some food for lunch, then continued to wait, but nothing happened. What about the assassination? Mr. Fool was in a bad mood. He tried divination again, but still couldn't find out anything useful. The result was that there was no danger. He really wanted to go above the gray fog, but he had a personal bodyguard there, so he couldn't perform the luck-changing ceremony. Although he could use the excuse of going to the bathroom, it didn't seem to have any effect on Shadow. If the bodyguard was a woman, it would be fine, but this was obviously a man. What if he peeked or found out that his employer had fainted on the toilet? It would be hard to explain. Klein had no choice but to continue waiting and believe that the ambassador would not let him down. He had ruined the other party's plans. If you kill someone from the other side, there is no way that the other side will not fight back. Thinking this way, I stayed up all night again, but still got nothing. At this time, Klein already had the urge to return to Backland, rush to the Intis embassy, and ask Backland whether he had arranged a killer and whether he could give him a straight answer. But this is obviously impossible. Klein could only keep reminding himself that this might be to let his guard down, make himself anxious, and expose his flaws. He still couldn't let his guard down. After comforting himself in this way, Klein could only endure it on the boat. Because he had not expected that things would develop so strangely, Klein was not well prepared and did not bring any magazines for entertainment. Or a card game or something. The cabin environment was rather depressing. Klein tried to chat with his bodyguard, but the bodyguard seemed very cold and silent. He only shook the shadow when he felt it was necessary. At other times, when Klein took the initiative to talk, the shadow under his feet did not respond at all. "Baker, I hate you." Klein was so angry that his teeth were itching. After enduring another whole day like this, Klein could no longer bear it. It was already evening and the sky was getting dark. He felt a little desperate when he thought that he had to endure another night. He really didn't want to stay in this cabin. He decided to have dinner in the restaurant on board. At the same time, on the nearby sea surface, an invisible air straw sank into the water and disappeared. Chapter 146, Fight. Klein. Rosago considers himself an elegant artist. What he admired most in his life was the courage of a common man. Even though he had many ways to approach Sherlock Moriarty, he still chose the most appropriate way. You can't swim faster than the ship. He is a Sequence 5 doll ambassador. Diving is his life, his passion, and his leisure. In Rosago's opinion, it would be very easy to deal with Klein, the little loser. It would be foolish of Baker to ask a Sequence 5 figure like him to make a personal trip to deal with such a small thing. However, Rosago has become accustomed to his boss's ignorance. He even thinks that he can control him. It's ridiculous. He is just a stupid guy like a secret puppet. Even without using the spirit straight line, he can still make the opponent run around in circles. He grew up in the environment of the Secret Order. Anyone who could survive and become a Sequence 5 puppet master had to go through various tests. Those who were fragile, arrogant, presumptuous, and stupid could not pass the test of finding the mermaid. Was Rosago called here by Bekram? He is not. He came here on his own for vacation. He saw the scenery along the way, tasted fresh fish, and reviewed the sports of swimming and diving. As for that clown, the battle is resolved in 3 seconds. Any second longer would be extremely disrespectful to the puppet master. This is not Bakerland being arrogant. The puppet master who is at sequence 5 is just that powerful. Reality is not a game, and the time it takes for the puppet master to complete initial control is also not fixed. It's impossible that when facing a sequence 5, it takes 20 seconds to complete the initial control, and when facing a sequence 9, it takes 20 seconds to complete the initial control, right? How could the Go-san family's methods be so honest? Losago returned to his cabin, wiped his wet hair, changed into clean clothes, and then walked towards the restaurant. It was time for him to have his meal, and everything was under control. Dining room. Klein ate the fried fish, feeling its delicate texture, and his unhappiness was immediately relieved. These days, Klein had nothing to do, so he observed the passengers on the ship. Most of them were going to Pritz Harbor, perhaps to make a living, or perhaps they wanted to leave Backland and fight on the sea. What if the Lord of Storms favored them and they could make a fortune? As for those who traveled with their families, Klein had not seen any yet. Even though the navy of the Kingdom of Loen was very powerful, in this era, the title of 4 Kings and 7 Generals was enough to dissuade a large number of people. There were still a group of small pirates on the sea, who were making a lot of noise, thinking about robbery, extortion, murder, fire prevention, alcohol, prostitutes, freedom, and happiness. Klein slowly enjoyed his meal while listening to other passengers or crew members in the restaurant talking about what they had seen and heard in various places. Rosago came to the restaurant on the ship and ordered the most expensive set meal. Then, with his plate, he found a separate, empty table and sat there like an old gentleman, slowly raising his knife and fork. Klein didn't care about the extra passenger dining at the table behind him. He was still struggling over whether he should find a way to get rid of the bodyguards and then go above the gray fog. Would the promised attack come or not? It was already so late. Klein complained patiently. He raised his fork, as if aiming, trying to pick up a pea and put it into his mouth. Although he preferred to eat it directly, this was a public place after all, and he was just trying to relax. While Klein was still aiming his fork, Rosago behind him had already used his knife and fork to accurately cut all the food on the plate into small pieces suitable for eating. He also poured himself a glass of wine. When the cork was opened, Rosago raised the corners of his mouth in joy. He had already divined that a small fish or a small crab were just dishes on the table and posed no threat to him. Klein paused while playing with his fork. His vision blurred, as if his eyes were covered in fog and his brain was pockmarked. His mind became unclear, as if it had rusted. The puppets of Antigonus. Klein's thinking was very slow, and even just thinking about the sealed artifact, 2049, became very difficult. Of course he knew what to do at this time, and that was to find someone to push him. But by the time his mind really reached this point, the puppetization might have already been completed. It is that simple to beat sequence 8 from sequence 5 in the same way. Rebellion. It's impossible. The other person knows everything you can do. Although Klein did not completely let down his guard, he did not expect that the other party would take action directly in a crowded place like a restaurant, and the method was so strange that it did not attract anyone's attention. He now doesn't even know who the enemy is or where the enemy is. Fortunately, he also hired a bodyguard. Although the invisibility ability of this hermit had no effect in the spiritual perspective of the puppet master and he was discovered from the beginning, Howlai was still able to gather a number of people and slightly distract Rosago's attention while he was having a meal. Klein's extended shadow shook slightly under his feet, but the amplitude was not large. It seemed that he was trapped. It was just a dream to reach Rosago on the other side. At this time, as an ordinary sequence 7, there is only one way to escape. That's selling out teammates. Shah-Ir was not discouraged. Although the control of the spirit line was the most difficult extraordinary ability below the demigod level, there were still ways to deal with it. The simplest way was to increase the strength of the spirit. Although Shah-Ir doesn't know how to use righteous means, he knows how to use evil means. That's frenzy. By lowering sanity, you increase mental resistance. Shah-Ir didn't hesitate. He used Klein's shadow as a medium and cast a shadow curse inside Klein's shadow. Over there, Klein, whose mind was originally very slow and almost offline, suddenly felt a cold, crazy, and corrupting force surge into his heart. A surge of anger blocked his abdomen, and he almost instinctively wanted to roar out loud. "Shut up." On the other side, Rosago, who was having a meal, frowned, but it was just a last-ditch struggle. His fingers moved slightly, controlling Klein's open mouth to close tightly. The rage in his chest was pent up, and he just couldn't vent it out. The violent reaction of the spirit and the strong agitation of the spiritual nature caused Rosago's manipulation to be temporarily and definitely affected. Seizing this moment, the shadow on the ground suddenly split, like a snake spitting out its tongue, and touched Rosago's shadow. Chapter 147 Mercury Retrograde. Innocent. Rosago sneered, and the rapidly spreading shadow on the ground was about to catch his shadow, but it missed. As the light and shadow changed, Rosago's shadow on the ground appeared on the other side. And his shadow on the ground just now was the distorted light and shadow created by his ability to create illusions. With a simple little trick, Mr. Rosago avoided the hasty sneak attack without using a paper doll substitute, flame jumping, and damage transfer. However, Shah-Ir had no intention of fighting at all. His shadow split into two halves, one half attacked Rosago, and the other half directly abandoned Klein Moretti's shadow, hoping to escape into a deeper shadow world. In order to escape successfully, he also summoned two creatures from the shadow world. These two shadow creatures immediately turned into two black snakes and grabbed Rosago's shadow again. Rosago sneered. This kind of low-level life was just as easy to control. His fingers moved slightly, and the spiritual line made initial contact, and he forcibly manipulated Klein to turn his body, using Klein's shadow. Standing in front of his own shadow. It's so easy, one can lead four. Shah-Ir felt the stalemate entangled with the spirit body eased a little, and without saying a word, he continued to shuttle through the shadow world and soon escaped from the range that the spirit body's thread wanted to control. Did you manage to run away? Rosago was not in a hurry. If running away was useful, what was the point of having a fortune teller? It was no exaggeration to say that he could still predict something even from those strong men of the same sequence who had powerful anti-divination abilities. Now, facing a hermit who can't tell fortunes, it's like being blessed by God, and the god of death is watching. Help me. Don't run. Please save me. Klein watched helplessly as his bodyguard stayed behind while he ran away. The feeling of betrayal in his heart became even deeper. Especially in a restaurant like this, where people are clearly facing the danger of death, not many people pay attention to the small activities happening here. Master Luo was able to carry 4 people at the same time and did not even cause much noise. This made Klein feel desperate and angry, which further intensified the shadow curse left by Shah-Ir. When Shah-Ir tried his best to break free from the control of the spirit thread and Master Luo was controlling the 2 shadow creatures, Klein was accidentally injured by the 2 shadow creatures. His curse and corruption deepened further, and he was finally able to move his wrist with difficulty. He held the specially prepared filthy charm. He had not wanted to use this trick, at least not at this time, as it might cause some accidental injuries, but his heart was now dominated by malicious emotions, the sadness of betrayal, and the emotions of depravity. The threat of death is approaching. Klein is not a saint. He can't care about so many things. Let's die together. Filthy. The corrupt emotions echoed with the corrupt spell. When this ancient hermetic language was squeezed out from between the teeth, the spell in his hand slipped out of his hand and was about to fall to the ground. This may cause a lot of accidental injuries. But who can care about it at this time? Master Luo saw that scene through his spiritual premonition. Evil words broke out in the restaurant, and ordinary people here fell down one after another, covering their heads. The dark red blood stained the splint on the ground. A true master, at this time, always keeps the heart of an apprentice. Master Luo was ready to snap his fingers. First the flames jumped, then the paper man substitute, then the holy evolution. The damage was transferred. No. Maybe this is some kind of pollution. That hermit. Could this spell be related to the Aurora Society? Could it be related to the true creator? Master Luo felt that strategic shift was also an art. When the effect of the spell was exhausted, he would attack again. Thinking of this, he snapped his fingers. On the side of the ship, a piece of paper card stuck on it burned silently, and Master Luo jumped through the flames and completed the process of passing through the wall. But what he didn't expect was that when Klein let go, the filthy talisman fell and caused some commotion. The two shadow creatures that were attacking Klein seemed to be infected and summoned by something. The power contained in them made them fear and worship them. Ah Ming. Through the guidance of some mysterious ritual, the shadows on the ground actively ate the fallen talismans. They passed through the shadow channel and went directly through the wall to appear outside the deck, and bumped into Master Luo, who let go and landed vertically gracefully. He had no intention of doing such a crude thing as stealing the boat. After the ship left Backland, the weather was good, and the bright sunshine made the falling shadows draw a line. Master Luo's shadow was touched. Master Luo felt a chill in his heart. He pressed the notarized document on his chest and quickly spoke in ancient Hermetic language. Invalid. The power of the filthy spell burst out, and the dark, indescribable sound, which only rang in the ears of the person involved, suddenly burst out, containing a lot of mystical knowledge and extremely crazy eating language. Master Luo's falling posture was slightly deformed. Invalid. The brilliance of the notarial certificate turned into a golden seal and was stamped. The words filled with madness were much weaker, but still painful, the kind of pain that made the skin split and the flesh boil. The paper figures that Rosago brought began to break into pieces. All of them were wailing and bleeding from all their orifices, and turned into ashes. At this time, of course he didn't mind using more paper dolls as substitutes. This was necessary. It was really the words of the Creator. If you can avoid accepting the challenge, try not to accept it. And that's not all. A python-like head bit over, and another paper man was shattered. Rosago retreated a little and came to the sea. The shadow creature that ate the filthy spell was obviously strengthened in some way, although it looked more like it was out of control. Invalid. Master Luo issued a ray of justice. The out-of-control shadow and the creature quickly disintegrated and soon turned into black light and shadow, completely disappearing. Almost. Master Luo breathed a sigh of relief, sank into the water, and gradually moved away from the area affected by the filthy power. He took out a very long air straw and moved it towards the sea surface. However, what he inhaled was not air, but river water with a strong smell. Master Luo coughed violently and was choked by the inexplicable, river water. He did not let the accident interfere with his judgment, and still kept the spiritual line of vision open, ready for any unexpected accidents that might occur at any time. And somewhere, a surviving shadow life appeared, holding a shadow in its mouth. Sha'ir placed Master Luo's shadow on a crude altar, and then placed the target shadow, the evil altar, and the Eye of the Wind, together, and began to arrange a directional curse ritual. It's a simple curse. Just the curse of drowning in Mercury retrograde. Chapter 148. The unprepared magician goes on stage. Can a simple curse kill a sequence 5 Beander? This is probably not easy. Unless their heads were held down by force, it was difficult for extraordinary people to drown. After all, this is not on the sea. Rosago used a paper man as a substitute again and easily avoided the curse this time. If he had not been careless just now, he would have choked on the water and almost choked to death. He just had to shout in ancient Hermetic language, invalid. This little curse will be dispelled directly. The Aurora Society's methods are disgusting. Rosago thought so in his heart. He began to swim upstream, but this time he was far less calm than before and felt a little more anxious. Even the secret doll ambassador would be greatly suppressed in the water. He had to get ashore quickly. This time he was really careless. The divination showed that there was no danger. These were indeed just 2 mid to low sequence extraordinaries. He had never expected that they could come up with so many precious and extraordinary items, and that these items had escaped his divination. When Rosago approached the water surface, from the perspective of the spirit line, he could already see that above the water, in that invisible place, there were some invisible things hidden. No matter how you hide, you can't hide from me. The closer Rosago got to the water, the more he realized that the spirit line in his field of vision had disappeared. The other party had chosen to retreat, out of the range that the spirit line could control. Rosago snapped his fingers and disappeared in flames. In the woods beside the river, the leaves of a big tree were set on fire. He performed a fire jump directly, and quickly took out the crystal to complete a divination. The crystal hung down, swinging quickly and violently, as if announcing a death sentence. Extremely dangerous. How is this possible? Rosago looked at the result of the divination in horror. His figure suddenly became stiff, and a figure in a dark red cloak appeared in his eyes. The crimson light gradually brightened, dyeing the forest with a layer of deep red, as if the full moon had arrived. Resentful soul. Vampire. Rose School. Rosago immediately realized what was happening to him, but it was obviously too late. If he was in his prime, he would certainly be able to deal with it calmly, but now he has lost the initiative. His paper man substitute has been consumed a lot. It takes time to control the spirit thread, and he is also affected by the crimson moonlight. Although the notarized document in his arms was valid, it was a sealed object after all, and its use still required certain conditions, such as opening his mouth to make it fair. Of course he didn't have time. After the crimson light tilted, his shadow was stretched directly in a specific direction. A black line ran along Rosago's shadow. The shadowy dagger was stained with the hazy, misty moonlight and passed by. Master Luo never expected that the other party, who was unable to defeat him, would directly call for help, and that the help came so quickly. Before he took action, he had clearly given the entire ship and nearby areas a quick check, but he was still tricked. Mr. Rosago, a sequence 5, quickly stood up again under the control of the vengeful spirit. The faceless man and his ability to create illusions took effect. In his eyes, the figure in the dark red cloak disappeared. He patted his chest, transferred the wound on his heart to his arm, leaving only a bloody hole, then turned around and chased in the direction of the ship again. There was already some commotion on the ship at this time. At least, the noise of the two shadow creatures exploding was seen by a few people. Of course, Klein did not stay on the ship. This was impossible to explain. He chose to jump off the boat directly. Anyway, the identity he used when boarding the boat was also given by the supporting service. He just ran away. As long as he was not caught, he would not be at fault. After the frenzy ended, although Klein was a little weak, he was much more sober. If he didn't leave at this time and chose to stay, it would be even worse. Well, Klein was a little discouraged. He had spent £300 or £400 to hire a bodyguard, but his service along the way was extremely inconsiderate. When he really faced the enemy, they all collapsed at the first touch, and later on, they just abandoned him and ran away. Although I had thought of this possibility a long time ago, it still makes people feel sad. Suddenly, a scene emerged in Klein's mind. It was a scene of himself being beaten into a sieve. Bang bang bang. A series of gunshots rang out. The sound was so dense that it sounded like a steam rifle firing. Finished. Just by hearing the sound, Klein knew he was dead. It was not like he had never used a pistol before, and the sound was much louder than that of a standard weapon. He dived into the water, even though he knew it was useless. He still fantasized that maybe the water flow could reduce the impact of the bullet. Whoosh! A gray-black shadow passed before my eyes. Klein felt a completely different sensation. It wasn't like being in the water, but it felt a bit like that. It just didn't feel very good. It felt cold, decadent, and eerie, like another world. Before he could feel anything, his waist was wrapped around him and he was dragged deeper. Those air bullets passed through where Klein was originally, but seemed to be blocked by an invisible shadow cloak and failed to play the role they should have. You should probably be thankful that the other party's extraordinary ability is strong and single. As long as we keep our distance or increase our numbers, it will be relatively safe. Shah-Ir boasted that the Fool's Path had only one ability. But in reality, it is true. Fool's Path, Sequence 9, Sequence 6. Although the fancy operation points are maxed out, the frontal combat ability is not good. The spell strength is average, and the magic damage is none. After Shah-Ire hides in the shadow world, witches can burn him with spiritual flames, warriors can chop him with the sword of dawn, and hunters can stab him with the blazing spear. But the faceless man had no way out. Using paper as soldiers was still a physical attack. Air bullets were still physical attacks, without any special attributes. He could control fire, but that was ordinary fire and could not burn people to death. The puppet master is powerful, but there are distance and time limits for manipulating the spirit thread. As long as you run fast, the puppet master will have no way to stop you. A magician, who has not prepared well in advance, is just an ordinary person. Although Klein did not understand these mystical knowledge, when he looked at the talking, black snake, wrapped around his waist, his expression was extremely subtle. Is this his bodyguard? Don't worry, I've already cursed that guy. Mercury is retrograde today. I am confident that I can run away with you in the water. The shadow creature that Shah-Ire was rubbing said with a solemn oath. I thought you ran away. Klein was somewhat moved. Although being tied up and dragged didn't feel good, he was very touched that this bodyguard didn't abandon him. Of course I ran, I still needed to use you as bait to buy time for my escape. Black Snake said without any hesitation. Klein's expression, which had just relaxed, froze. Chapter 149, Insidious Earthlings. I take back my apologies for doubting you just now. Klein had a deeper understanding of the other party's professional ethics. As expected of an extraordinary person with a gangster background, he is different when working as a bodyguard. Although he didn't understand this strange clone's ability, Klein still wanted to ask, so he asked directly. That powerful Beander, why didn't he chase you first? Klein didn't think that the other party would still want to keep him alive even after it had come to this. If I have to catch one first, I should catch the one with greater mobility. I summoned some shadow creatures that I can't control in order to deceive the fortune teller. I also combined the shadow curse with the seance ritual, split off part of my own shadow, and stuffed it into the body of this manipulative monster, misleading him and making him miscalculate the result of his divination. As long as he is determined to hunt you down, I will have a chance to escape in another direction. Shah-Ire answered as a matter of course, talking about this mysterious ritual of out-of-body experience as if everyone knows it. The curse is the medium, the real spirit, the real shadow, the real spirituality. Even the secret doll ambassador, in his heyday, could be misled, let alone the actor behind him. It's not that simple. A fortune teller is not so easily misled, especially one who is more powerful than me. Klein didn't believe it. He looked carefully and could only see a shadow. The good news is that he is wrapped in shadow and does not have to worry about death for the time being. The bad news is that he is unable to judge the external environment. But he knew that it was not so easy to be misled. There is only one way you can mislead a fortune teller. You didn't run in the opposite direction. You were always on the same line with us. Klein took out the divination tool, briefly occupied it, and then lied. You were right. But there is no reward. Sure said nonchalantly. If you want to induce a fortune teller, it is indeed very simple. They couldn't possibly do divination too frequently, so they could have a chance as long as they seized the gap between two divinations. You told me so much. It seems that you are not just running away. Are you afraid of revenge from a fortune teller? Klein guessed that if this guy wasn't afraid of retaliation later, he could have abandoned him. He was afraid that the person who took over the house would come after him. No one understands the fortune teller's ability to find people better than Klein. There's no need to make it so clear. Black Snake smiled and said, so how do we fight back? Seeing the other party's confidence, Klein also felt a surge of courage. What if he could continue fighting? There is only one chance. It requires courage and sacrifice. Black Snake began to persuade. When Klein heard this somewhat standard speech, he had a bad feeling in his heart. But he just couldn't say anything. After all, he was the one who caused this crisis. He did it all for the commission of £4.14. Now thinking about it, it was a huge loss. I got into this trouble because I accepted a commission from your agency. You should take some responsibility. If this guy hadn't run away, Klein would have blacklisted that unfortunate company. It's not our fault. Of course, if you can survive, we can consider giving you some compensation. Black Snake wanted to laugh when he thought of the 414 commission. Their company only took 6 sous, which was really conscientious. Don't worry, we still have some chance of winning. We just need some help. Black Snake smiled, and the shadow on his body flowed, turning back into human form. He looked like he was wrapped in shadow, and took Klein to catch up with the ship. The angry roars gradually subsided. When the air bullet passed by his eyes, Klein broke out in cold sweat. There was blood on his clothes, his expression looked somewhat painful, and his face was very pale. In front of him, the headless corpse fell down helplessly, and the huge sickle blade turned back into shadow. Their plan went smoothly. Go back to the ship and, when necessary, alert the ship, ask the sailors on the ship to help restrain the pursuers, and then complete the counterattack. The plan went perfectly, and Rosago's subsequent fight with the 2 men did cause some commotion. Klein had already made all the preparations. The only thing he didn't expect was that even though the other party was using the spirit thread to control it, he could still fire air bullets. Although he had seen it before, Klein didn't expect that these 2 abilities could be used at the same time. He was almost shot in the head. Fortunately, his teammate helped block the shot, giving him some time to react, but he still suffered some injuries. This ability is simply too rogue. After the initial control of the spirit line, there is no need for a fight. Just snap your fingers and shoot an air bullet to take it away directly. Klein looked at the guy who shrank back into his own shadow after completing the kill. This guy is more insidious. It turns out that this guy was not hiding anywhere else, he was hiding directly in his own shadow. No wonder he could deceive the fortune teller. This was not what he said, that he was escaping to a place, but that he was hiding directly beside him. He was clearly also initially controlled, and the spiritual ceremony ended directly. The spirit returned from the controlled shadow creature to Klein's real body in the shadow, then jumped out, threw out the shadow blade, and completed the kill. Although Klein didn't understand it yet, he still felt it was sinister. This is indeed insidious, after all, from the perspective of the spirit line, what if the spirit is separated from the body? The spirit hides in the body of a shadow creature through curses and descent, moves in the shadow world, and then affects the physical body at close range, turning the physical body into a shadow, and hides in the shadow of this inconspicuous clown next to it. It can affect the body at close range and also eliminate some traces. Through the return of the spirit, the descent ended, and the fluctuations in the fog broke free from the initial control of the spirit line, and then let the meaningless shadow creature take the bullet for Klein. The sailors on the ship noticed the movement and stood guard with their muskets raised vigilantly. Although they did not dare to attack rashly, the shadows under their feet had already paved the way for assassination and beheading. Throw a shadow spell and shout a foul roar to achieve instant influence and containment. Achieve initial control. Then beheaded him with one blow. Although Klein was confused, he could understand that this world was very dark and he was too naive before. Klein touched the bullet holes on his body, looked at the body that was swept away, the disappearing shadow, and himself who was being aimed at by a bunch of sailors with muskets. In his heart, he silently greeted someone's family. Chapter 150, New Go Sanjia and Old Go Sanjia. A person's life is always full of betrayal and lies. Klein never expected that the guy who said he would betray him would actually betray him. Shouldn't this kind of person's character be the type that says one thing and thinks another, with a sharp tongue but a soft heart? How can betrayal be real? As the guns were aimed and about to be fired, Klein covered his face and tried to jump towards the river next to him. He decided that even if he died, he would die outside, at least to choose a safe resurrection point for his body. If he can be resurrected this time, he will definitely take revenge. This is too much. Bang, bang, bang. It would have been fine if Klein didn't run. The sailors on the ship might have been shocked and hesitant. After all, the shadow beheading just now was too harmful. These ordinary sailors who were affected still needed to be stunned for a while. But when he ran, these people reacted almost instinctively. Klein didn't care. He lowered his head and hid most of his face behind the cloth. Although the masked thief looked a little weird, he didn't care anymore. The double fatigue of mind and body made him just want to free fall in a fancy way. Wow! His eyes blurred again and the feeling of being wrapped appeared again, as if he had stepped on a banana peel and fell into a black bubble. His shoulders were dragged again and he was thrown out a few meters with bumps. Suddenly, he felt strong under his feet and disappeared into the shadows after a few jumps. The bullets that missed their target fell helplessly into the river. A sailor who had not fired a shot at all glanced at the sailors around him and said proudly, "Look, what's the gun? These people who have mastered magical powers will run away on their own." The remaining sailors looked at each other for a while. So what were these guys doing on their ship? When I emerged from the shadows again, I had reached a safe place. Klein looked at the guy standing in the shadows playing with a shadow dagger with a not-so-pleasant expression. I need an explanation. Klein was so angry at this time. When had he ever been teased like this before? If it wasn't for the fact that the opponent hid in the shadow and he couldn't hit him, he would have to settle the score with the other party. If he had a purification bullet, the other party would not be so confident. Damn wild extraordinary person. The former official extraordinary was gnashing his teeth. He couldn't arrest the guy in front of him immediately, so he believed him and chose to leave by boat using a fake identity. It was a huge mistake. That's because I'm kind. Shaw Iyer's words made Klein tremble with anger, but he took out a black eyeball from his arms and said, "This is a very terrifying thing. It contains terrible pollution. I think you should know where this pollution came from. If I hadn't disposed of the body in time, perhaps none of the sailors on the ship would have survived. In fact, Mr. Zanshajia, who was chasing us, was in a state of obvious abnormality after being trapped by your talisman." Shaw Iyer threw the thing in his hand over, and then began to talk nonsense at length. He was afraid that the pollution was too serious, so he took some remedial measures. Klein didn't want to answer the call at all. He was now full of suspicion and vigilance towards Shaw Iyer. "Why don't you trust me? If you touch it, at most you'll hear some annoying language. If you've been contaminated beforehand, you might lose control." Shaw Iyer was a little sad. Klein was now wary of him. He really wanted to know. When his identity was exposed, he said that he had already recognized you. "You are not Sherlock, but Klein. I was just surprised that you came back to life, and I was worried that you might be harmful to the church, so I made these attempts to observe you. After all, I wanted to make sure that this was really my colleague, and not some demon that had taken over his body. When that time comes, will you regret being so indifferent to me now?" "What are you talking about? Why didn't I expose you? Isn't it obvious? I'm secretly involved in gangs. How could I possibly smear my resume just to expose you?" Although Klein couldn't see the guy in the shadows clearly, his fortune teller's intuition gave him a chill. He took a few steps back quickly. "Ahem, I can't take that thing. I'm not suitable for it. I'll give it to you as compensation. I hope you can continue to take care of our company's business in the future." Shaw Iyer coughed lightly, then disappeared into the shadows. Klein didn't even have the chance to speak before the person disappeared. He frowned and took out the divination crystal to try it out, repeating it 5 times. Has the person left? Are those strange shadows gone? Which direction did he go? Nothing has been done to my shadow, right? Is it safe here? After 5 consecutive attempts, using various tricks, Klein finally felt relieved. This experience left a deep psychological impact on him. He had never thought that he could deceive fortune-telling in this way. Directly divine whether there is danger nearby. The opponent leaves a beacon inside your shadow, which is not aggressive at all. Is this dangerous or not? You can't rely entirely on divination. Divination is not omnipotent. Klein thought of the diviner's code again. His divination result was that there was danger nearby. After careful analysis, he found that the danger was that. Extraordinary characteristics. But he was not sure whether there were any other dangers besides this one. What if the other party was trying to cheat? Why not leave such a thing behind to deceive his occupiers, and use this dangerous thing to cover up some less dangerous means? Well, Klein felt helpless. He always felt that his shadow was not clean. And this, all black eye, he felt that if he lost it, it might cause trouble, and if he kept it, it might also cause trouble. This shadow ability is disgusting. Klein turned and left. He planned to find a safe place and make 100 or 80 divinations to confirm that there was really no problem. He would then hold a luck-changing ceremony and then go to the gray fog. With the blessing of the gray fog, he would make another divination to see if he would get into any trouble. Although divination is not omnipotent, it is absolutely impossible to do without it. If he occupied it a few more times and the number increased, and with the help of the gray fog, no one would be able to mislead him. Why on earth would he give this to me? Klein still felt that there was something wrong, but as a former Nighthawk, he couldn't just throw away such a dangerous thing. It was really a headache. Take the time to throw it above the gray fog and directly cut off the connection with the real world. He just doesn't believe that his way of handling it isn't perfect enough. On the other side, Shah-Ir shook his head and sighed. Still young indeed. Don't you ever think about why you are given something like this, which contains pollution inside, is risky to hold, cannot be thrown away casually, cannot be used casually, and is not easy to sell. You throw it away casually, revealing your character. You want to make a move, exposing your important channels. It is not easy to receive such things at ordinary extraordinary gatherings. If you want to use it, you will expose your true colors, and the negative effects are no joke. You want to remove the pollution and expose the possible forces behind you and the levels you are in contact with. If you want to deal with this troublesome thing, you have to expose something. Chapter 151, Mother Earth's Head Pat. Klein still suffered from his lack of experience. He was still distracted by the little tricks used by Shah-Ir, and immersed in the mind-boggling illusion that the all-black eye was not the point, but the hidden things, or that there was something wrong with the all-black eye, and that carrying it around all the time was problematic in itself. This is the process that the Gosan family must go through if they want to transform. Of course, Klein also thought that perhaps the other party was simply thinking that things contaminated by the evil god had no value. He threw it to himself because he was worried about it being contaminated. After all, although this guy was a bit annoying, from his performance, he didn't really want to harm himself. He is just the kind of guy who makes people hate him, makes people uncomfortable, dislike him and makes people uncomfortable. Not that bad. Klein shook his head, expelling the thought from his mind, and made up his mind that if possible, they would better never meet again. On the other side, the Intis embassy. Shah-Ir, who turned into Ambassador Luo, was drinking wine leisurely in the room. In his hand, there was a golden page and a walnut-sized puppet head gleaming faintly. Intis is indeed very wealthy. Shah-Ir played with the puppet head for a while. He used his spiritual power to activate the power of this extraordinary item. His appearance slowly changed, jumping back and forth between the elves and the Loan people. In the end, he even wanted to become Leodoro with some mischievous interest. If it really changes, will the true god be able to sense it? Shah-Ir was eager to try, but the thought of the Storm Lord directly striking the Intis embassy with lightning was a bit too. He still considered the image issue for Leodoro a little. Shah-Ir smiled, and shadows flowed between his fingers, drawing a complex ritual symbol in the air. This symbol replaced the prayer and directly connected to the gray fog space. Through the gray fog space, a safe long-distance connection was made. A force fell on the golden page in Shah-Ir's hand, shattering the seal into pure extraordinary characteristics. Who doesn't have an angel behind him? Shah-Ir ate the Sequence 6 Notary Extraordinary characteristics in his hand. Only one Sequence 6 Notary trait. The characteristics of Sequence 9 to Sequence 7 have all been split. Does the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun and the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery have to be so ruthless in their dealings? Shah-Ir felt the extra power helplessly. His physical condition had been greatly improved, and then he only gained an auxiliary type of justice ability and the ability to create a contract. And then it was gone. These two companies, one splits extraordinary characteristics, and the other creates magical items. The utilization rate is really high. It's a bit of a headache to jump up and down like this. Shah-Ir relied on the fact that his spiritual channel was not closed, so he asked the archangels passing by to help heal himself. I also have an Eye of the Wind. He took out the Beander characteristic of Keelingos that he had seized. This one was also Sequence 6, and it was definitely a set. I ate the wrong characteristics, so let's leave it like this for now. Shah-Ir hung the Eye of Wind back around his waist and covered it with the robe he was wearing. The Fourth Age. Some time had passed since Shah-Ir nominally believed in the Mother Earth. His territory expanded normally, occupying a quarter of Intis, and a part of Fasak. No one cares about him. Those churches are still fighting each other in the central area of the northern continent near the Sea of Surroundings. Even though Shah-Ir believed that if he developed further, his territory would be comparable to the future kingdom of Fenaport, those churches that were hostile to each other still had little interest in Shah-Ir. Especially after the believers of the Church of Mother Earth migrated to his territory, no one came here anymore. Originally, the land in the westernmost part of the northern continent and the northwest part of the northern continent was barren, and the northwest region was mostly mountainous. The Antares Peak even spanned most of the northern continent. In the Fifth Era, it was like the backbone of the Fasak Empire. In this era, ever since Shah-Ir used a part of the Antares Mountains to build a huge statue of the Earth Mother, the believers of the Earth Mother have worshipped the entire Antares Mountains as a sacred mountain. Lilith seemed to like the largest mountain range in the northern continent and moved the kingdom of God directly to the mountain where Shah-Ir built the statue. Then Shah-Ir saw that the land in his own kingdom of Constantine quickly became fertile, and all kinds of strange hybrid creatures were running around, including griffins, turtles with fruit trees on their backs, jellyfish-like creatures that could float on land, and various golems made of stone and metal. When Shah-Ir tried to help the Queen of the Elf, Gaushinem and the God of Luck, service in his own territory and spread the faith at the same time, it didn't take long for the Holy Book of the Church of Mother Earth to be revised, and two more angels appeared under the throne of Mother Earth. They symbolize natural disasters and luck respectively, and are the angels who serve the Mother Earth and bestow punishment and gifts. Shah-Ir had never expected that the Church of Mother Earth would be so modern. In order to prevent his territory from being so chaotic, he tried a method to see if he could achieve a perfect linkage of thinking. Shah-Ir took action and directly rewrote the thinking logic of an entire city. In the sea of collective subconsciousness, they planted the belief in the six gods, the belief in the fallen god, the belief in the god of death, the belief in the god of spirits, the belief in Amen, the belief in Adam, the belief in Medici, the belief in the demon king, all kinds of beliefs, and also planted the psychological suggestion of not actively praying. If you just have faith but don't pray, there will be no danger, and you may be able to repeatedly brush up your faith. The experiment was perfect and the whole city once again became the focus of the world's attention. Everything was fine at first. After he played around like this, no one cared about the Church of Mother Earth. Isn't it normal for my angel to go crazy once in a while? This is what the Church of Mother Earth thinks. But in order to legitimize his faith, Shah-Ir made some fine adjustments and implanted a point of view in the believers based on the history compiled by these gods. They do not believe in these gods blindly, but believe in the original creator. The creator is embodied in all things, and these great beings are part of the creator. They believe in all great beings, and also believe in the original creator who is the source of all great beings. This belief system was logically consistent, and coupled with the whitewashing of history by these gods, Sha'al did not distort people's hearts. The believers accepted this explanation and gradually began to worship every great being. After all, these great beings were part of the original creator. They are all different aspects of the original creator, and all are worthy of the worship and faith of believers. Sha'al found that the effect was good in the pilot area. Just when he flew up and was about to promote it in the entire Constantine kingdom, his body became heavy and then he fell directly back to the ground and was killed by a big hand that touched his head. The mother goddess of earth looked at him with gentle, curious and slightly surprised eyes. The soft hands stroked his long dark blue hair, once, and again. Chapter 152. Do you long for freedom? Sha'al felt the touch on his head, and he wanted to say that this was inappropriate. And the status of the gods, that kind of high and mighty, that kind of transcendence. Don't you want any more? Sha'al really wanted to shout, "Mom," to see the other person's reaction. However, when he thought about the fact that this girl was the mother goddess of the earth, and that she was called Mom at the Mother Pathway Sequence 0, she must have been accustomed to being a mother to others. He thought that doing so would not have any shocking effect, so he gave up this unrealistic idea. It didn't matter in the past, but now he is an angel and can change to a big account at any time and wake up the original god to play for him. Why does he have to put on such a low profile? Take your dirty hands away from me. As soon as Sha'al thought of this, silver-white electric currents surrounded his hair and he directly attacked the mother goddess of earth. He wanted to try and see if the angels, at least the angels in the first echelon who were attacking head-on, could break through the defenses of Sequence 0. The mother goddess of the earth was stunned for a moment, shook her head gently, and naturally withdrew her palm. A faint halo was flowing on her palm, and it seemed that she was not affected at all. Sha'al frowned slightly. It felt like his defense was broken, but this guy repaired it directly. His blood recovered too quickly. The damage of his attack was not as high as the blood he automatically recovered, although this was also because he did not use his full strength. But did this guy use all his strength? Just as Sha'al was about to say something, he suddenly coughed, and pages of mint leaves and night-blooming vanilla grew out of his mouth. These two plants could actually affect mythical creatures, and when mixed together, they gave people a very refreshing feeling, a little too refreshing. I just want to give the world a little surprise. Sha'al simply shattered the plants and rinsed his mouth. Then he looked helplessly at the mother goddess of the earth who was blocking the door in front of him. It's too difficult. The power of capital is too strong. He tried it out in the pilot area, and before he could even leave, an intercontinental missile came over. If this wasn't the so-called Mother Earth territory, I don't know how many intercontinental missiles would have wiped it out. You know, there are some things you can't joke about. Although I'd love to try it. The expression of the Mother Goddess of the Earth seemed to carry some regret, but she still shook her head. Her eyes, which were full of maternal love, though gentle and loving, yet firm and unshakable like the earth, formed a sharp contrast with what she said. That's not an anchor for the gods. You're as poison for the gods, and a tonic to nourish the divinity in them. The Mother Earth didn't know how this elf came up with this wicked idea, and this guy really dared to implement it. He was afraid that the Mother would be too idle. Is this a small protest? Protesting the revised church scriptures that transformed the two elves from gods into angels serving the Earth Mother. Don't scare me. I am also an angel. I am not ignorant of the secrets of this world. If it's so easy to end it, then there are so many lives in the universe, and these life groups are countless times larger than the planets under our feet. If they just kowtow to the gods of Earth, will the gods of Earth directly overwhelm humanity with their divinity? The gods can reject the faith of believers. Sha'al felt a deep sense of lack of freedom. Those damn great beings actually restricted the angels' freedom of belief and freedom of speech. But there are some things that just can't be done. You can't even touch it. That's the rule. If you have too much free time, go help the Pope. The Mother Goddess of the Earth didn't care what Sha'al thought. She walked forward casually with her feet on the ground, as if she was overlooking the entire world. Wherever she walked, everything was growing vigorously. This was the joy of rebirth. Shah-Ir didn't agree, but he still accompanied him for a walk, which was considered as giving him enough face. The ability of the Mother Goddess of Earth is quite special. Just by touching her head a few times, Shah-Ir felt that he had gained 500 years of life. Perhaps this would be of some use to an angel. If believing in the Mother Goddess can bring eternal life, then even the most staunch fanatic will be shaken. That's what Shah-Ir thinks. The brainwashing method of eternal sun doesn't count. You should read more about the Church's teachings. The Mother Earth smiled, and the plants that received the gift quickly went through their life cycle and died. Of course I understand it. Every person's life is like a plant. Whatever it eats from Mother Earth, it must be returned exactly as it is. You can't just take in and not leave, otherwise, Mother will always be worried about you. Shah-Ir casually took out a copy of the Holy Book of the Earth. He had read it through a long time ago, or rather, those who have understood the Bible are heretics. The Mother Goddess of the Earth paused for a moment. What does it mean that Mother is always thinking about you? It seems that His Holiness the Pope needs help. Shah-Ir let out a soft cry, and his figure turned into lightning and disappeared. Let's talk next time. Come visit me when you have time. After the elf finished speaking, it disappeared at the speed of light, leaving only the sound behind. The Mother Goddess of the Earth chuckled, and then continued to walk on the earth at her own pace, holding the ridges, stepping on the veins of the earth, and feeling the rhythm of life. As for Shah-Ir, it is certainly impossible for him to help the Pope of the Church of Mother Earth. After he created a virtual personality to destroy Pope Huo's vegetable garden, he jumped into the sea of fog, found a comfortable place, and wrote The Travels of Grossel. Although he doesn't rely on this thing now, he can still find the location of the City of Miracles. Hall of Honesty. Shah-Ir came here again, and this time, as expected, he alarmed the negative personality of the fantasy dragon. Even though Shah-Ir did nothing, this crazy dragon woke up from his slumber, as if he had smelled the scent of his own kind. Do you want to be free? Shah-Ir walked to the bronze door with a happy smile. Strictly speaking, the earth at this time is still very strong. Nothing will happen. Roar. No sound was heard, but there was a dragon roar stirring in my heart, carrying with it a strong sense of power. Shah-Ir raised his hand and pressed down, and the storm in his spiritual world suddenly stopped, and everything became calm. According to normal logic, when a visionary dies, except for that special personality, that independent individual, all other identities or personalities must perish together, otherwise the visionary is not considered dead. Your existence, in addition to the pollution of the Chaos Sea, also proves that there is a layer between you and the real fantasy dragon. Now, do you want to compare with me to see who is more professional? Shah-Ir snapped his fingers, communicated with the gray fog space, and pulled out the historical projection of the future nightmare dragon, Alisuhad. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.